On today's Poker Live podcast, Garrett Adelstein will reveal the one secret that you need to know if you want to make $35 million in the next 20 years of your poker career. Just stay tuned and watch, guys. Welcome. We're here. We're live. Brand new Poker Live podcast. My name's Joey Ingram, a.k.a. Chicago Joey. We're back doing podcasts this week. We had on Andrew Nemi on Monday, the vlog and boss of the world, poker content king, Andrew Nemi. Yesterday we had on Stefan Sondheimer. Was a really great Wisdomatic podcast. I also played on a show known as Poker After Dark. I made my debut on Monday and Tuesday. Played some high stakes Pot Limit Omaha. The great game of Pot Limit Omaha, of course. And it went up the first day, down the second day. We'll be doing a video tomorrow and some other stuff next week. We also have a lot of guests coming up this month, guys. Should be Lex Feldhaus sometime over the next month. Maria Ho as well. Alex Foxen, number one GPI player. Mamacita. Garrett might like Mamacita. I don't know. We'll ask him about that. Chance Corinth as well, and a few other people. That's it. Joining me today on the podcast, coming back, is a young man. This guy's last appearance was one of the most popular podcast guests of 2018. He's a man who's entertained millions and millions around the world on LiveAtTheBike. I actually think that's true. It's probably his millions at this point in time. With his high stakes adventures, his large arms at the table, his always tan skin that he seems to always have. It's like he's playing poker for 24 hours a day, but also able to stay outside for 10 hours a day because he has more hours in the day than we all have. We're going to be talking about that, talk about what else he's been up to, talking about some of my favorite tweets that he's talked about over here, including, which people are really interested in, seems like, was overcoming some depression in 2018. We'll get into that and a bunch of other things as well. Of course, we're welcoming G-Man, a.k.a. Garrett Adelstein, to the podcast. It's Garrett Adelstein, not Garrett Adelstein, correct?
Yeah, you nailed it. Yeah, I think a lot of people on poker broadcasts mispronounce it forever, and I just didn't have the heart to tell them. But you nailed it. Adelstein is the correct pronunciation.
Okay, because I've been calling it Adelstein. I think Feldman's calling it Adelstein as well too. So, but now it's Adelstein, correct?
Yeah. I think one day over a couple beers, I was like, hey, by the way, you've been saying my name wrong for years. I don't really give a fuck, but he felt terrible. He's like, all right, new day. I'm gonna start saying it right. So anyway, but yeah, you got it. It's Adelstein.
Adelstein. All right. So Garrett Adelstein back in the podcast here. I know everybody out there is pretty excited about this one, Garrett. Garrett, why do you think people get so excited to watch you play or to hear more about where you're coming from or kind of just hear and find out more about you in general? It seems like people very interested in it.
Right. Well, first of all, I appreciate that introduction. Obviously, it was more than kind. And yeah, I mean, as to what you're saying, there's probably some truth to that. And, I'm appreciative of that too. I think probably the first thing I think of when it comes to that is just the way I play is rather unorthodox. When people think about poker players, they are interested in watching and maybe even to some extent want to emulate. They want to think of Tom Dwan in the mid 2000s, right? I mean, that's who I wanted to be, and that's how I always modeled my poker game. Although in many ways it can be rather profitable, maybe even in some games the most profitable, to just play a tight, solid, tight aggressive strategy. That's just never really how I've done it, and in many live games, I don't really think that's the optimal way to do it. So it's just kind of coincided that my natural play style is also one that I think the public at large is interested in, So I think that's probably a piece of it. I think another piece of it is I'm able to connect with a bunch of different worlds. For one, I've been playing high stakes live poker since the early 2000s. So a lot of OG poker players can relate to me. A lot of even current internet superstars can relate, at least in the sense that I grinded my teeth playing online. And then of course in the live arena, people can relate to me in the sense that that's what I do now. So that'd be that. And then maybe the last thing I might say on that is just like everyone else here watching, I struggle. People struggle, poker players struggle. The vast majority of poker players are just trying to get by. And so I think it's pretty typical that a lot of people really have a weight on their shoulders when they talk about themselves and their poker game. And so, maybe it's refreshing to hear some people talk about or hear me talk about how hey, many days are tough for me. you know, related to poker, unrelated to poker, you know, etc. So those would be my guesses.
Yeah, I think that most people seem to think that because you're playing the highest stakes that are running for live cash games out in the West Coast here, you know, you're having these $100,000 swings, 300, 600, 500, 1K, 200, 400, 50, 100.
Right.
You're always in the mix. You always seem like you're in good spirits at the poker table.
Right.
I think a lot of people out there see that from the outside and would think like, well, what's he have a problem with? Like, what's going on? What does he have to be upset about or depressed about? And it does seem like a lot of people who get to a successful point in whatever it is that they're doing become less inclined to want to share something like that about themselves, because people do have that impression of that everything should be perfect. And why should this person struggle when I'm over here and I got no money, I can't pay my bill or whatever, and I'm struggling? What's this guy's problem?
Right.
So, yeah, I think that is really refreshing for a lot of people out there to hear. And I mean, I think it's something that all of us go through. I don't think all of us are perfect or feeling upbeat or super positive every single day, no matter what position in life that we're in.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you know, I couldn't agree more with that. Like, you know, as it relates to sort of my own struggles, like, you know, I've been fighting depression, you know, my entire life, since as early as I can remember. And, you know, in my 20s, like, I didn't really talk about it like much at all, you know, because like, I think I had that chip on my shoulder too, you know? And so in that sense, like, I can really relate to like a lot of like good younger poker players where, you know, they're super happy to tell everyone how good they are at poker, how good they are at pulling girls, how good they are at, you know, being a friend or a son or whatever. And I can understand that because, like, you know, there was a period in my life where I think I felt more insecure about those things. And I think a good way to deal with that, not a good way, a common way to deal with that is sort of by masking it with like extreme security, you know? And sort of as I've gotten older, like, I kind of put my guard down with that stuff. And also, like, I think it allows me to like interact with others, connect with others, etc., more to just like kind of tell it how it is, you know, in the sense that like, yeah, like I have a good life. Yeah, I've achieved a level of professional success that like continues to blow my mind like every day. But like that's still only a small piece of the puzzle. And like, you know, my whole life I've always struggled. And although like I've made a lot of changes for the better to where I live with a lot more peace day to day, like it will always be a struggle for me in that sense. You know, like if you get 100 people in a room, like I'm never going to be like the most like naturally happy person, you know, like I know I'm gonna have to grind and work for that throughout my life. But that's like a fun challenge that I very much look forward to, you know? So.
Yes, you mentioned on Twitter that 2018, this was something that you felt like you overcame through therapy. And so I guess like what exactly changed and sort of how has your mindset changed from 2018 to at this point in time in 2019?
Right. So yeah, so to be clear, like with that, like one thing I really hope that people didn't get out of that tweet was that like depression is sort of like this like binary situation, right? Like one is either depressed or they're not depressed. And like nothing could be further from the truth. What I was saying in summation was that like the first 30 years of my life, like I would have like bouts of depression. So there'd be times where like things would be cool, even for periods like up to months at a time, but usually more like weeks, you know, but I would struggle, you know, and I could go on and on about the details of it, but I'll try and like simplify it. Like I would mostly just have periods of like on and off, right? And so the on periods, like I was just like killing it, like in every way. Like I was super productive. I was working out every day. I was eating healthy. I was like, you know, continuing to build upon my relationships with others. I was making progress with, you know, other goals, professional and otherwise. And then I'd have off periods. And this is a little dark to say, but hopefully it brings maybe some understanding to maybe some of your listeners that like you're not alone. Like I'd have periods where I'd go weeks, and in the darkest periods, months, where I would like barely get out of bed, actually. And my life would just kind of consist of like lying around, like watching like whatever movies, TV shows, ordering shitty delivery, and like literally lying in bed for months. Like I would gain like crazy amounts of weight, or at least crazy amounts for someone who's like been in love with fitness and nutrition in a way that I have my whole life, you know? And then like one day, like I would just like not be able to like handle that shit anymore. and I could like break free of it. And then I would start like an on cycle. And it was just like back and forth, like over and over again, you know? And so basically the improvements that I've made have allowed me, instead of those cycles to last weeks and again, sometimes months, like those cycles almost never are more than like 24 hours for me at this point, you know? And that's like incredible progress. I think when people come to me asking for advice on this sort of thing, like I say, the first thing is like, don't ever expect to be like happy all the time. Don't ever expect to go to from 0 to 100 with anything, whether it be like living with peace or fitness or poker or anything else. Like it's never going to happen. And if you try to just like hit 100, you're definitely going to crash and burn. Like I don't even care like what it is, you know? And so I've slowly built up over the past several years what like my therapist likes to refer to as like emotional resilience, right? Like in life, shit's gonna happen, right? Like dumb shit's gonna happen. Like you don't work out for a couple days, and now it's up to you to decide whether you're gonna work out on the third day or take 3 more months off, right? And then truly tragic things, death, you know, whatever the case, like truly tragic things that like really are worth being depressed about are going to happen. And so if you can't handle like taking a couple days off the gym, like how are you ever going to handle the big stuff, you know? And so that's really what the concept of emotional resiliency is like all about. It's learning to, from the smallest things to the biggest things, pick yourself up and sort of like reevaluate. Like at any given moment, let's say you're not feeling well, you always have a choice to go one way or another, you know? And so it's making the choice to do something or some things that are going to benefit your life, that are going to help you to crawl out of this particularly dark place, you know? So that's kind of what the first 30 years of my life looked like. And then I got an incredible psychologist, which like I couldn't recommend more, even to like the healthiest of individuals. If it's something you can afford and you can find a therapist you like and trust, it's just like a game changer. And it was always such a game changer to me. And I went and worked with her for an hour a week for, you know, I guess well over a couple years. And a lot of what we focused on was something called CBT, which stands for Cognitive Behavioral Therapy. She was great in every way. So some of our therapy was like more traditional in nature. Traditional, think like, so tell me about some things that happened to you in your childhood, you know, and then you go from there and you see if or to what extent that affects some of your thoughts, patterns, choices, etc. today. That's more traditional, right? Mm-hmm. Cognitive behavioral therapy, like basically cognitive means like your thoughts lead to your behaviors, right? And so to change your behaviors, you have to first change like your thoughts, you know? And so it's a very logical and like rational approach to sort of getting better, you know? Again, I don't want to use the phrase beating depression because I don't think that's the way it works. I don't think you beat depression. I just think like you make improvements, you know? And so I'll give you a quick example of that, and we could talk about this as little or as much as you want, but like a quick example of this was like one thing that a lot of people who are depressed suffer from is perfectionism, right? So for me, if I were to play poker poorly one day, if I were to skip a day in the gym, I would have this mindset where I go, everything's fucked. The house is on fire. Like nothing's worth doing anymore because I'm no longer perfect, right? And so that would lead me to, you know, whatever, either not play poker or play poker poorly. It would lead me to not going to the gym. It would lead me to not even facing the world, not wanting to interact with people because like I was like disgusted with myself for not being perfect, you know? But like the reality of the situation, all right. And here's where I used to trick myself. And I think a lot of perfectionists do this. They say, okay, like that's fine, but one day I will achieve perfection. And so I'm really hard on myself, but the rest of the world isn't. And in that way, I'm actually better than them, you know? And I think a lot of poker players do that. A lot of really great poker players do that. It's like a badge of honor, right? To be like, well, this guy loses money. He doesn't even give a fuck. And I'm ready to just blow my head off when I do, right? Because I'm better than this person. But like, I feel like nothing could be further from the truth, you know? Like all we're really trying to do, all of us, I believe, is like live like happier lives, live our life with more peace. And so if in this quest for perfection, instead of let's say like, being like a productive member of society 80-90% of the time, you're, let's say, 50% on, 50% off. Well, like in the net, you're actually like much less productive, much less successful, much less like you're achieving your goals at a much lower rate, right? Because you're just spending so much time like depressed. And I think like once that clicked, like, oh fuck, like on a very like real life tangible level, like I've been underachieving quite a bit as a result of this thought process. It became a lot easier to say, okay, I give up on trying to be 100%, like in my case, to be honest, like in my darkest years of depression, which were like in my late 20s, like I was like at 20% efficiency, dude. Like I don't even know how to describe the 100%, like what that would even mean, but if that means anything, whatever, go with it. Like it was like 80% of the time I was lying around doing nothing. 20% of the time I was like cleaning up the messes and then immediately falling back into like a downward spiral, And so the work over those years was like getting to 30% and then getting to 40%, you know what I mean? And then just like slowly building from there. And yeah, that's kind of led me to where I'm at today. And, I'm actually not even doing therapy right now because like things have made a turn for the better to such a large extent. I haven't seen my therapist in like a little less than a year, although I probably will go back if and when sort of I start to struggle with things.
Mm-hmm.
But like cognitive behavioral therapy is like an integral part of my life every single day, and like when I get like fucked up at the poker table, like I'll have a conversation with myself in the car and I'll say, okay, like let's reassess your life. Let's reassess what's really going on here. And like by the end of that conversation, I can recognize that like my life is still incredibly good. Like nothing has changed. And like it's up to me to let like whatever these negative thoughts and emotions are consume me and bring me pain for the next however many hours or days, or to choose the logical path, which is like nothing's changed. My life is still great. There's no reason to be devastated by this, So incredibly long-winded, but I don't know, hopefully that's like a bit of a primer in terms of how maybe someone could use cognitive behavioral therapy to help them day to day. So,
yeah, I think that what you just said is something that I think a lot of people can relate to. I think most people experience feelings like that, whether it lasts a month or a day or a year or
right.
many, many years. I certainly think over this past year, and this is something I realized when I thought more about it, maybe a couple months back, was that I've sort of, used poker over the years to be my anxiety breaker in a lot of ways. So whenever I was sitting there uncomfortable, I didn't really want to face these inner thoughts or experiences, I would just play poker. And that's always what I went back to.
Right.
And I haven't been playing as much poker these past couple of years. So now I've been forced to think about these things more. And I'm like, oh man, it's all, I go through spurts where I just lay in bed sometimes, or I just eat a lot of food, or I'm just, not really doing much for it. I'm sure people that follow me on social media definitely see this in my patterns with content and with Twitter, with Instagram and stuff like that. So, but not really something I necessarily get into or talk about. It's with anyone ever. It's more something I just kind of keep inside. And I think I've talked about one person, but that's about it. But it sounds like for you that this therapy really helped. And I guess now when you're at the point where you feel that way over a 24-hour time period, how do you get yourself out of that? Whereas before it might last for longer, now it lasts for a shorter period of time.
Right. Yeah. There's all kinds of hacks I use, but like the first thing I go to is like what Chris Sparks taught me, the terminology, which was a firebreaker, right? So quite literally, like you feel like your life, your house, whatever's on fire, right? And so you got to do something to get yourself out of that fire, right? So like what I wouldn't recommend is like, even if you work out a lot like me, like don't be like, all right, I'm gonna go to the gym for 2 hours. Like that would be not like an optimal choice because you're already depressed as fuck, right? And the thought of like getting up and going to the gym 2 hours is like, it literally seems like an absolutely impossible task, right? But like, what about like take like, your favorite thing in the world, like your dog, out for a walk for 5 minutes, right? Okay, well now we're talking about something more reasonable. What about like literally just hit play on Spotify and listen to one of your favorite songs. Like that requires like, 1 second of energy, And so, I've read this in a bunch of places, and they talk about the best thing one can do to beat depression in any given moment is something, right? And like literally that's all it means. Like you could do anything. Take a step, right? Take a breath, right? Like breathing, of course, as I'm sure most of you know, is like an incredibly powerful tool it's been paramount sort of in my recovery and my ability today with day-to-day struggles, and it's improved my poker game immensely, and on and on and on. But going back to what I'm saying is like, just do something. And what often will happen in that case situation is you'll do one thing and that'll lead to you doing the second thing, and on and on and on. And it's remarkable the way it works. Like I think a lot of us, myself included, are like, well, that's not going to work for me. I'm too smart for this. Like I can't trick myself. Right. But like, you really can, that's kind of just like the way the human mind works. I'm not like guaranteeing results for others or whatnot, but I have found that just doing something small helps me to take the second step, and this is something I talked about in my last podcast too, but the concept of containers, I'm just going to bring it up again because it's just so important for my life. It's important that you understand like everything in your life is just like a self-created container, right? So Joey, you were saying that you like lied in bed for a while and you didn't podcast and whatever. Like you have the option at any moment to close that container and start a new one, right? Where you're making choices that are like better for your life, right? Which whether that be podcasting more or whatever other productive or even just like social or whatever activities that you enjoy at any time. Like you always have the opportunity to close one container and open a new one. And to me, that's just like the most like unbelievable feeling, and in the past I would never be able to do something like this, but I'll have days where I'll like be hungover. Hungover is like almost like, it's like a very dangerous zone for me in terms of like falling into spirals, but it's like, I'll be hungover. The first half the day I've eaten shitty all day, and like not always, but a lot of times like in the afternoon I'll just make the choice to open a new container and go like in my exercise room and just like start walking on the treadmill. And I can't tell you like how incredibly powerful and empowering like that feeling is. And so often it then leads to like a series of other good choices that allow me to, to then have like another successful week. Because like I can tell you, if I hadn't made these changes, like I think that I should just like avoid alcohol and other things like entirely, because like if you don't have the ability to recover from them in a healthy way, like for me, it's like it was like a no-brainer that it just wasn't worth it anymore, But I've been very fortunate in the last several years to, again, slowly and still with plenty of issues, but slowly allow alcohol to be like a net benefit for my life, and we don't need to go on about the benefits. There's so many bad things about it, and there's like so many good things about it that if you can utilize it or other substances or whatever to have it make or allow for it to have a net benefit on your life, I think that's like the big one. If you're using it to deal with pain, if you're using it to mask anxiety, maybe even to some extent similar to what you described at times you used poker for, then I think, that's a slippery slope, and, you may be doing more harm than good for yourself. So
it sounds like you try to remain extremely mindful, and before you couldn't necessarily remain mindful when you'd be in that sort of zone or that sort of mood, and it would last for a while. Whereas now you can become more aware of it. And it sounds like you figured out different things that you can do, whether it's breathing, music, the gym, a shower, something of that nature.
yeah, shower's a great one.
Yeah, you can be in the moment and say, okay, I'm feeling like this. I need to get out of this. I know that this works for me. It's worked for me in the past. I'm going to go do this now. I'm going to go close this container, open this new container, and try to end this now and be productive and work towards what I want to get towards, rather than letting this impact me and stay with me for who knows how long in the future.
Right. Yep. Yeah, that's spot on, and you brought up something in what you just said that like I think is a critical piece to this. Like, I've dissected sort of why I do the things I do, with oftentimes professional help in addition to, loved ones and whatever. more times than I want to admit in my life, you know? So I've seen this kind of from every angle. And one thing my therapist helped me to understand is that the off Garrett, the guy who sits and eats all day and watches TV all day and like does it for weeks straight, like that's part of who I am. You know, that's not like a different guy. And like even that is like very helpful to me, you know, to just be like, okay, like a bunch of people on the outside think like I'm really great and like I'm going to convince myself I'm really great, and then there's just this random thing I need to get rid of, you know, but that's not really how it is, and that's not me. Like I am someone who's capable of achieving some pretty cool things, and I'm also someone who's fully capable of like lying in bed for a while, you know. And then like so then the question becomes like, well, why, aside from just like depression, let's say, like would one choose to do that, you know? And if I'm honest with myself, it's like, well, I like eating shitty. Like it's pretty fun sometimes, you know? Like if you can eat like really good tasting, not so good for you foods and have that be a net benefit for your life, then it makes sense. If you can like watch an hour or two or whatever one thinks is optimal of television or movies a day, and that adds value and it's a net benefit to your life, well then like there's nothing wrong with that, you know. And so that's like that's what I've found. It's like it wasn't like once I started to improve from this stuff, like I don't watch movies anymore. Like quite the contrary, you know. Like I probably watch like a couple hours a day of either a TV show or a movie, you know, and it's something like I really love. I really enjoy it. Like you know, it decompresses me, etc. You know, and another thing with that is when I was like in these off periods, like what I would do is I phrase it as like I black out, right? What I mean by that is like I didn't want to face like having to look in the mirror. I didn't want to face having to take that first step to crawl out of depression. And there was one really great thing about blacking out. It's super underrated. And that's that I'm deal with like a ton of anxiety in my life. And I think that's like a somewhat common trait amongst poker players in general. I have like a ton of anxiety, but when I was blacking out, like I had none, like none, dude. Like I wasn't sitting there being like, fuck, like when am I gonna get back in the gym, or fuck, how many calories are in this meal, or like whatever financial goal, whatever like interpersonal goal, whatever. I'm not thinking about any of that shit. I'm literally just like flatline, like just fucking order something, eat, chill, like brains off. And that was like such a big epiphany to understand that there like it gave me such a deeper understanding of part of why I liked doing that, you know. And so how can one use that? Well, for me, like I use that to understand like that I need to be doing a lot of things to help like keep my anxiety under control, right? And some of that involves like watching a movie. Some of that involves like maybe like drinking sometimes or whatever, you know? Because like if you're just like sitting there high strung as fuck, like 24/7, like you're just not gonna make it, dude. You're gonna fucking crash and burn. And that's like basically exactly like what I used to do, dude. I would have like insane periods sometimes. Let's call it like 3 month periods sometimes where I would just do like everything perfect. Like I'd be sober like the entire time. I would just eat every meal perfect. I would just get totally ripped. I'd be just like doing productive activities 16 hours a day. And dude, it was like a guarantee that like when that ended, I'd be going into a very deep and dark and long depression, you know? And it's like, it's just not worth it. It doesn't, I don't know. It just has no value to me. Like people thinking I'm great at things like has no value to me. And me thinking that I'm like great or the best at anything has like no value to me at all anymore. You know, I only want to make choices that allow me to like enjoy, you know, like each day of my life. And I think part of that is very much accepting that I'm not the best at things and that it's not even a goal of mine to be the best at any one thing, let alone everything, you know. So
do you talk about this type of thing with anyone else? Because it sounds like you have some well thought out ideas and well thought out introspection of sort of how you've dealt with all this. But is this something that you talk with your girlfriend about or people in your life about, or is this something that you only really discuss with a therapist.
Right. Yeah. I would say like, this is still something like I have like a little bit of insecurity about, like, in terms of like, I joke around and stuff, but like, if I'm being totally honest, like I very deeply like don't want people to think that like I'm self-centered or narcissistic or like think it's about me or whatever, and that like extends all the way out to like I really don't want to bother others like with whatever struggles I have, especially because like as you pointed out, like a lot of times from the outside it's hard for people, even people I'm close with, honestly, to really understand or relate to what struggles I have, but with that said, I have made some improvement in that area in terms of opening up to a few people I'm close with occasionally, but definitely my default is always like whenever I get to spend time with these people I'm close with, most of them, let's say like that don't live in Los Angeles, like I really, aggressively try and keep the conversation like about them or whatever the case, or some sort of like mutual like topic of conversation, and then the last thing I would say about that is there's definitely like exactly one exception, and that's my girlfriend, and I told you last time, I'll tell you again, like I'm very, very fortunate to have her. And like the way that she helps me the most with this stuff day to day is with the cognitive behavioral therapy. Like it's okay to sit and like have a conversation with yourself in your head where you like mentally fight through some cognitive distortions, but it's so much fucking easier when you have like a person to talk to, who understands what you go through, because like they've been there like in the battle like with it, they've been there with you as you've battled it for years. And a lot of times like maybe sometimes I'll be off track, and I'll say something that shows like my thoughts are still clearly very distorted on this particular issue. Like she has no problem like calling me out, she'll just be like, is that really the truth of the situation, and so that's been monumentally valuable. And no question, like if someone does have a significant other who's willing to support them through that, I mean, it's such a game changer. And I mean, it's invaluable. And although I do often like feel bad just wasting so much of her time in her life sifting through this shit, I know that she's supportive of it. And yeah, like she would say like she's very happy to do it all the time, but I would still like tell you I feel bad about it, kind of similar to what we talked about earlier. So yeah.
Wow, a lot to kind of unpack from a lot of things you said. But I mean, first of all, if you ever need someone to talk to about these things, man, I'm here.
I appreciate that. Obviously, right back at you. And we've kind of at times discussed it like a little, but we've never gone like
sure. We've
super deep on it. So
right. I mean, it's tough. I relate to a lot of things you're saying. It's just it's tough, man. It's like, what are you supposed to do? Like, how do you kind of, you still want to succeed in your life. You still have high ambition for yourself when it comes to the gym,
right.
Comes to your relationships, when it comes to poker.
Right.
And then you also get this feedback from the public of a lot of this admiration, thinking that you have it all figured out and these sorts of things like that. So you're sort of think, why don't I have it all figured out? And why do I, so it's just this kind of circle of things. And it can probably drive someone a little fucking nuts if they, when they think about it some days. So
for sure. Yeah. It's definitely like a lot to digest, and I think it's a lot easier to sort of approach it like on a super micro level, like not even like one day at a time, but like literally like one decision at a time, like when you're not feeling well, just be like, okay, what choice can I make that will help me right now? Fuck the rest of the day, fuck 5 years from now, whatever. But like, I just want to make like a healthy choice for myself right now. And then, like I said, like you kind of build off that, as impossible as it seems to accomplish anything some days, and or as impossible as it seems that you're going to smile some days. And that's like part of like one of the darkest, shittiest things about depression is it's in your head. So your head convinces you that the shitty way you feel right now is how you will feel every second for the rest of your life, and it sucks so bad. But like, if you can fight through that and recognize that that is not true, And like, if you have like a ton of documentation that you've written down that proves that sometimes you feel good, like that can help you to take the first step, you know? And so that's part of it. And then the other part of it, just that I would mention, you know, is it's just when you are feeling good, take note, appreciate it, give yourself a pat on the fucking back. Cause like you don't feel good naturally. Like it's cause you put in the work to feel good, you know? Like the word gratitude is kind of it's a bit toxic these days with social media culture and Instagram and whatnot, but it's such an important word for me. And it's like, I feel like so much of the peace I live with is because like I'm grateful for so many things, you know, and listing them, I think doesn't necessarily do much for your viewers, but one of them that's certainly universal is like grateful for feeling good, you know? And like, so all these days I feel good, I go, I'm so grateful that I feel this way. And to me, I'm really able to build off of that. So.
So I guess when you think back on this past year and this transition that you've kind of been going through, how do you think it's impacted your, I guess, your poker goals or your ability to play poker, or maybe what else you want out of life that isn't necessarily poker specific related?
Right. Yeah. Again, I just want one quick point of clarification, just simply because like I think it will potentially be beneficial to some, and that's that it wasn't like that this year like a light switch like turned on. It didn't go from like 0 to 100. It was actually more like over 3 years it went from like 20 to 80, you know? So it was less extreme and over a longer period of time, you know? But to answer your question specifically, yeah, I mean, you know, I'm not gonna lie, like it helps you in everything, in every area of your life, you know? Like one thing that used to happen to me before is like if I was like getting fucked up playing poker, like I just would stop playing, you know? Like, and that was totally true like before I had the money to like just stop playing for a while. Like there were periods where like, you know, like I was nowhere close to like being able to retire or something, and like I would still just take like weeks and weeks off playing, like because I just like couldn't face it, you know? And I can relate to one trying to fight depression or anxiety with poker, but I'm sure also some of you can relate to just not wanting to play at all when you're dealing with it, you know, in the same way that I didn't want to do anything at all. So it's improved like my poker game in a million ways. It improves my game like during sessions when like shit goes wrong. Like there's just like another level of awareness that I didn't used to fully have, that like this is not a problem like at all. Like this is, you know what I mean? Like this is no problem. And I'm like so much more kind to myself. Like I've always been pretty good at like when I get quote unquote unlucky, so things out of my control. I've always been pretty good at not letting that bother me much when I play. But I used to tilt so hard when it was like self-inflicted fuck ups, like so hard, you know? And now it's like that still happens for sure, especially when you're going to play like such an outrageous outside the box way in which I play. Like you're still going to do things that are just like, after you just like, you don't even know what happened. You're like, what the fuck did I just do? That was so fucking stupid, you know? But like, I forgive myself so much easier than I would before, you know? And I go, like, I'll say something to myself when that happens, and I'll say, like, did you show up today? Did you meditate before you played? Did you go to the gym? Have you made healthy food choices? Have you done everything you fucking can to mentally prepare to execute to the best of your ability today? How about the last 15 years? You know, and obviously, you know, usually the answer is yes for that day, and like to a very large extent for 15 years. And then you say, okay, that's all you can do. You know, like LeBron says it all the time, like it's super corny, but like you just put in the work and then you just live with the results. And poker's so fickle anyway, dude. Like there's such a thin line between when you just like rip in like a 500 big blind bluff and it works and it doesn't. Do you know how incredibly fucking hard it is to when that goes wrong, be like, yeah, it was fine. It was good. You know how fucking hard that, like, it is so incredibly hard that, like, I wouldn't, like, yeah, as you get better at least at trying to answer that question, but you're never going to be like even close to perfect, you know? So I always fall back on, I put in the work before, I'm a human, I make mistakes, like, I forgive myself. And not only do I forgive myself, but making this choice to forgive myself is critical to my ability to continuing to execute for the rest of this session, you know? So it just works on like every single level, you know? But you got to believe it, you know? You got to actually believe these things about yourself in a positive way. And so that's where putting in all of this work off the table in terms of, like, I know it's corny, but like truly like finding a way to love yourself, I think becomes like really important, you know? Because if deep down you don't like yourself and you don't like who you are, like, it doesn't really matter what you say. Like, when you fuck up, you're going to be like, all right, well, yeah, of course I fuck up. I'm an asshole. Like, I suck at playing, you know, like, whatever. So I also just want to say one other thing about this. I am painfully aware that, like, my thoughts on this and or I should just say, like, my experiences as a poker player over the last 15 years are dissimilar from almost every other poker player. And, like, many people at home are probably, and with great reason, like, being like, okay, well, that's cool for you to say. Like, you've had a ton of success in poker. Like, of course you can just, like, forgive yourself, move on, you know, but the other guy's like, I fucking need this money for rent and I've just fucked this up, you know? Like, and so I am well aware that what I am saying, depending on the circumstances in your life, like, make it potentially, you know, impossible or much harder to do, you know? But nevertheless, I feel like, irrelevant of those circumstances, I think that sort of thought process will lead you down like the right path, you know? So
Garrett. I'm gonna tie something in for something that you said recently on a Live at the Bike stream.
Sure.
So Garrett, I think my name got brought up during a Larson Live at the Bike live stream, and some other podcast. And Garrett was like, Joey harasses me to come on the podcast. Now, Garrett, I'm gonna explain why. Okay, this is why. This podcast is why.
Right when I said that, I was like, that's not what I meant, and
I know that's not what you meant. But let me explain this where I'm coming from. So when I'm thinking about doing the podcast, I haven't really done many podcasts this past year or two. It's kind of been my friends, and once in a while I get the motivation to do it. But when I do, I think about, one, who do I like talking to the most? It's usually like Doug, you'll be in there too, Phil Galfano will be in there. It's usually like 3 people that come to my mind. Right. And then it's who's been doing something in poker, who have I been watching? And normally you're doing some crazy shit on the Friday night show. And then I think, well, who do the fans want to see? The fans want to hear more from Garrett. So that ends up happening. That's why when I'm sitting there, I'm like, man, I feel like doing a pod. I'm like, who am I going to ask? I'm like, well, Doug, I don't know. Doug's been a professional food eater for the past 3 months, so I don't think he's in podcast mode right now. But Garrett's been playing poker every day, having these swings. So that's usually why I always end up going, while I'll sit there, I'll kind of message you. We'll talk for a bit, maybe talk about doing the pod. But I mean, things like this, man, this is something that people in poker world, they don't get to hear things like this at all, bro.
Right. Well, I really appreciate you saying that. I mean, that's super classy of you to take, by my calculation, like a super obnoxious thing I said, and like still find a way to compliment me on it. But I really do just like want to clarify that, like, dude, I mean, you like, we've talked enough, etc. Like, you know, I'm just like so fucking hyperbolic, like in everything I say, you know? Oh, yeah. And so when I said that, like, that's just not what I meant, like, at all, you know? But like, I have a tendency to just like say dumb things and put my foot in my mouth sometimes. And what I was really trying to say is, like, you know, occasionally we do text and you're like, hey, do you want to do a pod or whatever? And it's not like a function of like my time being like particularly valuable or important. It's not. It's just that I have my own insecurities that, like, you know, like, that I'm just going to start like just repeating things and just like, you know, I'm not going to really provide like value to your viewers, you know, and that's really where I was coming from. And that's why, like, you know, this podcast coincided with like almost a year exactly from the last one. Both times was like a day before I left for Coachella. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that's where I'm coming from with that. That's my very long-winded way of saying that's just not what I meant. And I'm sorry. And like, I love talking with you on air, off air, etc. Harassing is just not the word I meant in any way. You know? But nevertheless, I know that's not even why you brought it up, and I do again appreciate the compliment.
No problem, man. But I wanted to bring that up and kind of that this first 40 minutes. That's why, you know what I'm saying? Like this isn't something you're going to hear from really other people. And I feel like a lot of people in poker, they look to other people in poker for this sort of advice or wisdom or words. And you might hear other people outside of poker say things like this, but when it's someone in your community that you've come to find inspiration from or aspire to be like, or just found joy watching for many, many hours, which a lot of people out there in the poker world have done, I think when that person is saying these kind of things, you take it with a different grain. You take it and you say, wow, okay, this person goes through this. Like, I feel like it just has more of an impact because we hear things like this mentioned from people outside of the community all the time. But I don't really watch too much of that stuff from someone else. Whereas when you say it, it has a different impact for even me personally. So if it impacts me personally this way, I think it's going to impact other people out there personally as well too. So, it's you never know, man, how many lives might be changed from something that you said today, because I know this is a very serious thing a lot of people think about all the time, and they can't get it figured out because they don't know to go to a therapist, or they don't want to talk to it with the girlfriend about it, or they don't have any friends they can bring this shit up with. So it's just in their head constantly all day long, and they don't know how to fucking escape that feeling they have.
Right. Well, again, I really appreciate that. And, poker's a tough gig in terms of having it add value to your life in a non-financial way, of course, with it just being a zero-sum game, and there's just a bunch of struggles with it in that way. And so that's one thing that, although like my poker game, the stakes I play for, whatever, like haven't really changed for a long time, me being more of a public figure in the poker world has changed by the nature of like a lot of big games going to streams. And at first I was like, this is somewhere between neutral and slightly negative, but like I fully embrace it now. And I won't lie, like I do so for pretty selfish reasons. If there's a little bit of background noise, sorry, my maids are vacuuming in the other room. It should go away in 1 second. Can you not even hear it?
I can't hear it. You're just okay. Sometimes when you talk, because you're kind of I'm kind of letting you go. You're talking that way, so that sometimes the audio can't get picked up. But when you talk in
okay, yeah. I'll make sure I talk into the mic a little better. Sorry about that. But anyway, going back to what I was saying, like, I'll admit that like it has like brought additional value to my life by like, being able to help others, in a way that like I couldn't before, like I really don't have an interest in helping like poker players get better at poker. If I'm being totally honest, like that's just not something that interests me. And like, I feel like a bit of, I just feel better about it. I don't want to say moral obligation. It's too strong a phrase. I just personally feel better about myself not making the games even harder. And I do think like to current poker professionals, like I'm, in a way like doing them a solid by not making the games tougher. However incredibly small that change would be, but I mean, let's face it, like you have a few of these guys that come up with these courses on a couple of the big sites, and it's a big fucking deal, man. The information they give is huge. Anyway, I'm going on a tangent. Let me go back to what I was saying, but in a way where I'm not helping poker players get better at poker. Like I couldn't be happier to do that. And it adds like so much value to my life. And I can't tell you how many Twitter message convos, Facebook message convos, even text and telephone chats that I've had with complete strangers saying like, like I respect you as a person. When you like talked about like these struggles you have, like it meant a lot to me. Like I would love to like have some one-on time with you discussing it, and there's a countless number of people that I've done that with after. And like, I don't bring that up like to say like, hey, look, I'm nice. Like it's actually quite the contrary. Like it has like made my life like so much better. And like, I've enjoyed that quite a bit, and I guess that wouldn't really be a thing. Like if it wasn't for these poker streams. So in that way, I'm like eternally grateful to them,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what would probably come from something like this, is that you mentioned earlier not wanting to bother your girlfriend or not wanting to bother friends or anything else with what you perceive as sort of a selfish conversation that you might have with someone else. Whereas I look at it in that both people get value from this. So you sort of talking about these things not only helps you get value for yourself in terms of talking it out more and then getting feedback from someone that you're talking to, but also that person is going to take that in themselves and also say, hey, well, maybe this, I identify with this as well.
Right.
And I didn't realize it until Garrett said this to me. And now say it to that person. So, I think you said it's more of, I don't want to be selfish about the conversation and steer it towards this topic. But at the same time, I think it is helpful for both sides when you talk about something like this too. And I think we always forget that because I think I know you're pretty similar in that you don't like asking for anything really from a lot of people. It's you don't want to bother someone or whatever it is. I'm the same way when it comes to these kind of things. And that's why I internalize a lot of these thoughts as well too. But I've noticed when other people bring something to me, I always love listening. I love talking like this, what you're saying here. I love just hearing this and being able to sort of bounce things off with you and sort of just let you open up and then try to pick something out of that I can then follow up with. And then all in the same time, I'm taking in myself too and kind of saying, well, shit, man, a lot of this stuff applies to me. So I think that's something that you might not think about as well, is that both sides get value. And sure, some people might not be interested in hearing it, but I think you can kind of gauge that pretty quickly if that's the case with someone, if they don't want to talk about it.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Chris used to bring up this concept to me that like everyone's like an expert witness in something, and so if you talk with anyone, obviously like social awkwardness, anxiety, like these are very real issues that like really make it hard for people who don't know each other well, and sometimes even people that know each other really well, to really break down those walls and have like a meaningful conversation of sorts. But like, especially if you can do that, like you'll find that like almost everyone is like a very interesting person. Almost everyone has some really interesting things to share that I love listening to, both because like I want to learn about them, like I want to, like, even if it's just in that conversation, like support them, but also like on just like a theoretical level. Like many of these conversations are just like fascinating to discuss just on an intellectual theoretical level, even if it isn't necessarily like one person offering advice or support on any level,
Mm-hmm. Well, I do want to mention the chat here. We've had a lot of really positive comments. Also, for some reason, people keep donating a lot of money. So shout out to Wino Poker. Kayla, she donated $30. Dan, I think, donated $25. Ed, I think, donated $20. And then a few other people. Abby, they're not saved here, but I didn't even know I could really get donations on YouTube. I greatly appreciate that. I never really asked for a donation before. So, but, I very much appreciate it. I thank you for the donations, for the support, and for those sorts of things like that. Thank you very much. It's not something a little strange of a thing to get donations, but I know how streamers and how Twitch works and how these things work. But
dude, you know what it is, man? All these people watch Live at the Bike, and so they're used to being able to donate on whatever that platform is. So they think it's par for the course, man. So
I guess so. Yeah,
everyone's just throwing money your way. But anyway, yeah, a few of the people you listed, I know, like in real life or whatever, and all great people, and it doesn't surprise me that they're trying to help the cause, man.
Yeah, we gotta donate it back into things over here. So, but yeah, actually, I probably wouldn't have been doing podcast this entire month is actually directly because of you, because I wasn't planning on doing any podcasts at all anytime recently. I was kind of thinking of quitting poker content for good.
Right.
And then you sent me a message and you said, hey, let's do it April 11th before Coachella. And I was like, let's do it. And then I was like, well, if I'm going to do it with Garrett, I might as well just schedule a whole month. So I scheduled a whole month. I played on Poker After Dark. I'm going to go to Reno. I might go to Montenegro. So technically you are the catalyst for this entire change of myself in terms of my own direction. So, I'm sure that's something that, like I said, it's something you don't even think about, right? It's like, oh, to you, it's just, okay, we're doing this. But at the same time, for someone else, it has an impact on them to a degree with which you might never really know about.
Sure. Well, I appreciate that. How's it been going? I very briefly saw you got even-ish on the first Poker After Dark day. I didn't see the second, but how'd that go? And also, how's podcasting and all of it been this week? Kind of just jumping right back into it.
Well, I think I was a little rusty with Andrew on Monday, but yesterday with Stefan, he he dropped a lot of wisdom on there. But then playing on stream, I don't know how you do that. That's so much stress, and lights are there. It's just such a different environment than a normal game. So the first day I ended up getting up money about 9,000. The second day I finished down. I was up 8K first day, down 9K second day, but just didn't make any hands. And
Right.
Randall was in the game. You know, Randall Emmett, you play with him.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So he was in the game playing 80% of his hands, but just didn't make any hands. But overall, the experience was fun, great exposure.
Right.
Wish I would have got to like actually make some plays and kind of show how I play PLO. But when you don't make any hands in a game where it's going 3-4 way to the flop, oftentimes you can't really be creative because you need a hand, and especially against a guy who's never folding. So
sure. Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I can definitely relate to what you're saying, like in terms of poker after dark, like obviously you played on LiveAtTheBike too, dude. Like the level of production, the staff, the studio, everything about it, it's just like exponentially different and more intense. And so I can remember the first time I played on that shit too. Like the first like hour, like I don't even know if I did run a big bluff or not, but I definitely didn't want to. You know, like I was just like everything about it was just like rather intimidating, you know. So what I will say though, for future poker after dark sessions that I assume you'll play in is like it gets much easier, like, and it eventually just becomes like second nature, and you just, you know, you don't even care at all and whatnot. So, but other people do, and you can use that against them. So,
other people that play on the stream care about something.
Yeah, I'm saying, you know, some little strategy things or whatnot. That's all I mean by that.
Yeah. I mean, you obviously have a lot of experience, and what's been your impression of how things have gone with LiveAtTheBike with the $1 million cash game? There's been 3 of them, and there's been, you know, the one time I was doing commentary, there's over 11,000 people watching live, and the other ones are getting thousands of people watching live, and they become sort of a phenomenon, I feel like, in the West Coast, and it's only growing and growing and getting bigger and bigger in the poker world. And you seem to be a very focal point of the games, the high stakes games, and a big reason why the show has been able to have this much success.
Right. Yeah. You know, there's so many things that go into that. Thank you again for saying that. But, you know, there's so many things that have sort of nothing to do with me that I think have made that so. You know, I think that it's just been a sort of like good time in poker the last like year or two in terms of, you know, high stakes games. It doesn't take much. You don't need like a list of like 30 fun players to make a game, you know? So if you even just like have a couple guys that want to play occasionally, somewhat regularly, whatever, you know, you have a game. And, you know, I would say where I come in with that is I'm always going to try and make the game as fun as possible, as big as possible, and as much action as possible, you know? And I don't say action like as some sort of sales pitch. I mean, like quite literally, like fuck with the structure and stuff, you know? Like try and make it, you know, 6 or 7 handed instead of 8 or 9. Try and make there like be an ante of 1 big blind or more. Try and make it 3 blinds. Try and encourage straddles. Like when you have 4 blinds, an ante, and you're playing 6-handed, like that game has like nothing in common with like 2 blind, 9-handed, no limit Texas Hold'em. You know what I mean? And the great thing about this, and this kind of goes back to your very first question, is it allows like my personal goals as a poker player, which is of course to make money when I'm playing. It coincides with what the audience wants to watch, you know, which is again, as much action as possible, people being forced on a very theoretical level to play much more hands than they typically are used to, which leads to a lot more like unique situations, you know, like, I mean, it's just like when you're playing 2 blind poker and under the gun opens and the big blind calls like on every flop, like, I mean, so much of this shit is so close to like automatic, or like you mix in a way that's like still so boring, you know, but like with a lot of these structures that I've, you know, encouraged, you know, Ryan Feldman and the powers that be at LiveAtTheBike to do, it's allowed for a game that is both coincidentally, because it really is just a coincidence, much more profitable for the best players and much more fun for the viewing audience, you know? And so in that way, there's been this really cool symbiotic relationship between myself and the people who are in charge of poker streams, because our goals in almost like every situation like align almost directly, you know? And it just goes totally like, think of like as in the exact opposite situation. It's like many times you're in a public casino game and you have several of the players that are trying to make it as many handed as possible and, you know, have it go as slow as possible instead of there being a shot clock. And you know what I'm saying? And so it's because my personal preferences are the same as what the viewing public at large wants, I think it's had an influence, in terms of just making the games more interesting, but that's part of it. I think another very boring logistical aspect of this is just the paywall. I know I'm not saying something that everyone doesn't already bitch about and whatever, but the reality is Poker After Dark is behind a paywall. I don't know if that's the optimal business decision for them. I don't really care that much to weigh in on it. But Live at the Bike, of course, is not. And
Right.
although to watch replays of it, you have to buy a subscription. You can watch it live on 2 or 3 different platforms. And that is just such a game changer, because so many people are unwilling to pay for anything behind a paywall, but are willing to watch it for free and deal with whatever bullshit advertising comes up during it, and so what it's allowed, I just think this is such a game changer in terms of why Live at the Bike has become what it's become. It's quite simply because you can watch it for free, and you have, some of the biggest games in the world being played in LA, and you have this setup that allows people to play, even if it's on a very low budget production level type thing, without a paywall. And honestly, I think it was always kind of going to explode, and I don't really see that changing, so.
It's an interesting point you bring up about it always was going to explode, because I think if you keep being consistent with what Live at the Bike's doing, then I don't think it can really go down. It can only go up, because it's one of the only consistent productions on a 4-day-a-week basis that's really happening. You get the small stakes, you get the high stakes. I do think that maybe that process is expedited when you have maybe yourself battling with the Nick Bertucci or with an Art and those sorts of things. The $1 Million Cash Game, that brings in new viewers that then will stick around for the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday games as well too. Right. So I do think the paywall is obviously, that's a pretty big thing, but also the consistency is huge. And also I think Live at the Bike's done a great job of giving nicknames to people, building these characters. There's rivalries going on as well too. So it's when you tune in on a Friday, you're going to get Nick, you're going to get Garrett, you're going to get Art, you're going to get Andy, you're going to get these guys that and then during the other days, you might get Dennis, you might get Ramsey, you got some of the girls that pop in once in a while, Wino pops in once in a while, Christy Arnett will come on once in a while, you get a Mamacita that shows up and people start, becoming enamored with her. I mean, her name is Mamacita, and, I understand the love they have, as some people say Poppy to me, but so I think there's a lot of factors going on too. And you make a good point that maybe it was always going to happen, but at the same time, I do think it's definitely been expedited a little bit. And at this point in time, man, I really think sky's the limit. And just in terms of interest, conversation, and I guess, does anything like that, does that maybe, what do you think about that? That the future might be even more exposure for yourself, and the level that you're at now can really only go up and up, as I think a lot of people consider you the person they want to watch the most.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I used to have mixed feelings about it, but at this point, I'm fine with it. It's a net positive for my life. I think it's a net positive for poker, not me, but streams in general, I think are a net positive for poker. And definitely what you're saying is spot on in terms of characters. You just go back to reality TV 101, people like characters, one of my guilty habits is watching MTV's The Challenge, and everyone has an opinion. Are you team Wes? Are you team CT? Are you team Johnny Bananas? It's because what's that? I mean, I love them all, actually. If I had to pick one, I'd probably say Johnny, because he's just so funny. He's just such a dick, but I really do love all of them, and Wes is killing it this season as always. But anyway, the point is they're characters, and they're built up over seasons, and I think that is Live at the Bike has done a good job of that. A, but sure, B, it's kind of natural, in high stakes games, the player pool is always going to be super small. That rivalries are built up, and people tune in each week to hear me talk about how much better Art is than me, and hear Art reaffirm how much better is than me, and sit there and guess whether I'm serious or lying, and who actually is better, and all this random shit that of course doesn't matter at all. but the fans fucking love that stuff.
Oh yeah.
You know, they just love it. And so, you know, yeah, I don't mind it really. Like, it's funny because like if someone's sitting there hovering over a poker game I'm playing, like I fucking hate that, you know? I hate it first and foremost because like I think it's bad for the game. I think it's a much less profitable game if people are like hovering over it watching. People are nervous to bluff and this and that. But like the stream has become so natural and the cameras are just kind of there and always there that I don't think it takes away much from the action. But it still does take away from the action, but it's like not that big of a deal. And more importantly, like many times the game wouldn't get off the ground without the stream, right? And so that's one of the great things about Live at the Bike is like, yeah, we usually play for 5 hours on stream, but like my average session is like 15 hours. Like that's the average, you know? And so I've had so many like 24 plus hour sessions from a game that like started on a stream that probably never would have been built if you didn't have like someone like Ryan Feldman texting a whole bunch of people saying, hey, there's this game, do you want to play? And the people on the receiving end of that text, they don't feel like targets, right? Like Ryan's not like, at least not directly through poker profiting from them playing on the stream. Ryan's not like playing against them in hands. But like if you have like a winning poker player who's building the games and sending the text, it's just like a fucking icky feeling, you know? Like people don't want to deal with that. And like you're often going to get like a lot of responses, you know, as I do sometimes build off stream games where like a lot of people are like, okay, let me know when the game goes. Give me the final lineup, and then I'll decide whether I want a seat. And that response is the most reasonable thing, like, in the entire world. You know, like, it reminds me of when Doug made that video and, like, he, like, chastised Berkey for, like, not playing in that $1 million Live at the Bike cash game, which, I don't know. I thought that was, like, a little over the top, probably inappropriate, although the video itself was absolutely fucking hilarious when he, like, quoted, "You're in my backyard now." Shit's so funny, you know, but I'm definitely overall with Team Berkey on that. But like then when Doug like went after like even to some extent like on any level like any recreational players, like to me that's just like I don't know. You just can't do that in my mind, you know, like I don't. In the end, Doug's a content creator and I'm a poker player playing in high stakes games, but like I would just never ever call out like someone who's good for the game like publicly. You know, so yeah.
Yeah, I guess Doug doesn't necessarily have to worry about that as much because he's not playing as much, you know, whereas if you said that you're still playing every single week, multiple times a week, whereas Doug, that was like a one-time thing. I feel like he came back and that was like a special week. So
sure. It's not really that big of a deal. Like it doesn't matter, but I guess I just want to bring that up in general. Like one thing that I do try to do at least with like this small platform that I may have is try and encourage professional poker players to do and say things in a way that preserve the poker economy as much as possible, you know. And if you look at like my tweets or whatnot, like the vast majority of them are related to something of that nature, you know. So although yeah, I mean I guess I would say like I do always like want the poker economy to like continue to thrive as much as possible for selfish reasons and also for very unselfish reasons. Like I don't know. I guess I'm losing my train of thought here, but I guess I'm saying like I just want I want to at least do my small part to try and you know encourage professionals to act like professionals, you know. So
yeah, I think
I mean, we've talked about that plenty, you know, so I'm not going to sort of give a laundry list of some of the things people can do, which is, of course, are endlessly discussed already anyway, but yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like you're very much against training site onslaught with the courses everywhere and the everything that's currently going down with poker training.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely am, you know, like and there's so many reasons for that, but let's start out with I feel like human beings have a tendency to they have a goal, they have a point, they want to do something, and then they try and like build an argument with whatever bullshit to try and help them get to that point or that goal, you know. Poker players love doing that. Like if you're drawing for seats, you know, and one guy like draws, he goes, no, I don't sit in that seat, or no, you got to wait for me to draw. You know what I'm saying? Like, as a random example, like there's like a million angles people try and pull in those sort of things. But yeah, like I'll be one of the first to admit that like if you take you know, and since we've already brought it up, and I'm only gonna like use his name because like he's a friend and I know he would take this the right way. I wouldn't say this with someone who I was only an acquaintance with. But if you compare someone's poker game like myself and Art, right? Like I was playing the highest levels like 15 years ago and Art was like 4 years old or 5 years old or whatever at that time, right? And it's painfully clear by like the way Art plays poker, the things he says, everything that like sure, like he grinded his teeth playing like a little bit of live, like low stakes poker in the beginning for a short period of time compared to 15 years. But like the overwhelming majority of his knowledge has just come from like incredibly hard work. And some of that is like just like literally like memorizing what players who have worked even harder and been around longer and have spent like a lot of time like giving away this incredibly valuable information, right? So it like leads to this situation where like in some ways like yeah, I don't know. So I'll say that part of it, and then to branch off from there, like I'll say that the times I loved playing poker the most were like in the mid 2000s, right? Especially like high stakes heads up, right? So when you're playing heads up, I'm sure almost everyone knows like both players are playing such extremely wide ranges that it creates like all sorts of just incredibly like messy, unique situations, like leveling, psychology, metagame. These are just like huge parts of the game, you know? And it's some of the stuff that I've always enjoyed the most about poker. And I'll admit, I think are some of the areas I excel the most with poker. Well, you know, the more and more poker becomes like a solved game, it's not even close to solved. It won't ever be close to solved, but it's still a lot more solved than 10 years ago, right? Like the smaller an edge I have in that situation, you know? So I'll just like say it how it is. Like in that way alone, like it's like frustrating for me, you know? Now the difference I think between myself and whatever, like, pick a TV pro from 10 years ago that no longer is considered to be a good poker player. I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus. I'm sure you guys could think of 100 names, right? Is those guys like just like whined and didn't adapt, you know? Like I have no wine game in me, you know? Like if I am not good enough at something, if I like feel like my edge is smaller or non-existent, like the last thing I'm ever going to do is whine in the way that I like just did and like not do anything about it. Like I'm gonna, you know, if you can't beat them, join them kind of thing, you know? So, I mean, it's probably pretty obvious to those of your viewers who like are very seasoned poker players that like, although like I'm shitting on people who work very hard and very much study GTO play, like I, of course, also work very hard at these things because if not, like, although I have 5 times as much experience as someone like Art, he would be able to just like fuck me up, you know? And so that's like, that's part of my frustration, I think, with the way poker has evolved. But again, I think it's up to each individual poker player to choose to rebel against it and not put in the work or convince themselves that whatever system they have or have been using forever is still optimal, or like, you know, to take a very deep, like introspective and honest look at your poker game and say like, am I really better? Am I really playing this spot better versus them? And if not, you know, make tweaks to your game, you know. But especially in live poker, like especially with the dynamic between usually quite strong and then not so strong poker players, usually they kind of inhibit those two categories in high stakes live games. Like the complexities will always be, there'll always be a ton of complexities. There'll always be a ton of multi-way spots, which of course have not been solved yet. And there's still just like a ton of leveling and psychology and whatever, you know, like if you're sitting there playing high stakes poker on your computer and you're using real time like solver software and it tells you with this combo to just close your eyes and mash 250 bigs in, like you're gonna do it, right, Obora? You know, but like if you're like if you usually play like 50, 100, and today you're in a super juicy 200, 400 plus an ante game, and the buy-in is 100K and whatever, and like it's still like the correct spot to just close your eyes and mash in 100K, are you going to do it? You know, the answer is some guys will, some guys won't. Some guys are going to do it less than they should. Maybe some guys will even do it more than they should, you know, but the point is there's still just like a ton of things outside of even people attempting to play GTO poker. That's always going to be part of the live arena. So, yeah.
So it sounds like you think that live poker is going to be safe. It's be a much different experience than online poker for the foreseeable future. And obviously the different formats with the 3 blinds or an ante or shorthanded with those type of things, I think those things help to keep the game interesting, new, unsolved, kind of different. And obviously the deep stacks too, that's certainly, when you're 700 big blinds deep, 800 big blinds deep, there's a lot of different things in overbetting, which you are one of the most, you love overbetting, Garrett. You really loved overbet. And I only play no limit hold'em so I can overbet, like I see on LiveAtTheBike. So it's yeah, man, it seems like live poker is far from being that way, though, especially with the new players come in. You have a Nick Bertucci who starts playing and now he's become a regular. And I think you'll always have guys like a Nick Bertucci who find poker, who love it, who are successful outside of poker, and then decide to start playing more poker, and then they end up playing with you.
Right. Sure. Yeah. I mean, Nick's someone obviously who he's no picnic to play with. Maybe that was the case a few years ago, but he's worked so hard and he's become such a good player in his own right that's another thing that you often see. Even if poker isn't one's primary profession, like if they work very hard in 2019, they're going to become like very formidable opponents. But as it relates to the longevity aspect that you mentioned, I think high stakes poker is like always going to just be like a one-off. And what I mean by that is like the games could be like super good for a while. They could be super bad. And all you need is like 1 or 3 or whatever people to like kind of make all the difference in the world with that. Like if you have one guy who's just like an incredible spot and huge games are being built around him for a while, which is of course something that happens all the time in high stakes poker. Well, what happens? You have like a bunch of mediocre regs like who think this is their chance, and like the reality is they're almost certainly not even breaking even in the game, right? So like all of these games get built, a few guys are winning a lot, maybe 1 or 2 guys who think they're winning a lot are breaking even, a few guys who think they're winning are definitely losing, and on and on and on, but all it takes is like the game to go, and so that's really been the reality of my life for a very long time now, is like I just need the game to fucking go. I remember I used to play in this one super high stakes game a long time ago, and the guy's rather infamous, but I won't mention his name. And so he used to come with a cashier's check, right? And that's the most he would lose, right? But then he would insist everyone give him loans after that he would just never pay back, right? And so the other players, to preserve their seat, had to just keep giving him loans, which like he was never going to leave with any money. So that money would always end up on the table. But what it would do in essence is just create this like infinitely long poker session where like he would keep losing his money. He'd keep getting loans. And so if you're the best player or even one of the best players in that situation, it's a dream. And if you're the weakest pro, let's say, you're getting fucking destroyed in that situation, right? There's no new money from like the fun player coming in. It's just like, you're essentially just like the fun player is like not even really there anymore. That's not really how it is, because in fact, like the really great players are going to be even better at exploiting the weakest players, but you get what I'm saying. And now you're just like in this game with like everyone who's better than you, and you're playing for like 2 days straight. And so that happened to me like almost weekly for like a few years, and it's just such a perfect example of you just need the fucking game to go. And so as it relates to longevity, like I don't think that there's really guarantees with that. I think that very easily, like I could be playing high stakes poker for like 20 to 30 hours a week for the next couple of years. I think it could be very easy that on average, that number could be more like 5 to 10 hours a week on average, right? With each probably one session going a lot longer. As it relates to the level below that, let's call it the 5, 10, 10, 20 no limit level, which of course in a pretty like sick, twisted way for everyone who's not playing nosebleeds. That's usually like the second biggest game. I actually think that an equilibrium has been sort of created and will continue to exist to at least some extent. What I mean by that is the games can't get tough enough to the point where like you can't make a decent living at 5-10 and 10-20, right? You'll just see like a bunch of pros like exiting the industry, right? It's just like basic supply and demand. So yes, like although 5 years ago and certainly 10 years ago, like 10-20 live was like outrageously more profitable, I think it's now at a level now where there will be, at least to some extent, an equilibrium of sorts. And, you know, many people talk about the European players who come to Los Angeles and just like populate the 5-10 and 10-20 games in LA. Well, if those games get much worse, they'll just stop coming, you know, and a new equilibrium will be created. I don't really say that to be positive. I actually kind of believe that to be the case. I'm not really forecasting 20 years from now, but I think in the next few years, I think it's more or less going to look like that. And if you force me to answer, well, do you think the games will be a little tougher in whatever it's called, mid-high stakes live poker in 3 years? I would say yes, probably a little bit tougher. But I don't think it's ever going to just like drop off in the way online has for, of course, a multitude of other much different reasons. So
yeah, I think online it's dropped off and how it used to be, but it's still there's still a lot of high stakes action that is going if you take a look at the whole entire internet, but it's not focused to the one site or two sites or three sites like it used to be. So it used to be the two main sites, and then there'd be some of the offshoot sites that had some games on there that you would sort of risk playing on. Whereas now it's 10 to 20 of those sites and not really a main site that people play on. So that's a big part of how exactly the online high stakes ecosystem's changed.
Sure. Yeah.
So I want to talk about a couple of your tweets here, because you don't tweet often, but when you do, you always have something interesting to say in here. So I want to talk about the one I just posted on Instagram, which is pro tip: stop trying so hard to sound like a pro at the table. There are better ways to overcompensate for your average penis size. Instead of range, 3-bet, blocker, frequency, solver, and EV, try I put you on an ice face, a power pocket, or just talk about anything else.
Right. Yeah.
What you were saying about wanting to, kind of wanting to keep the way that you educate poker players. This is the kind of things you want to give. You want to give advice to professionals out there to not make the game tougher.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm just allergic to like poker talk, like at the table. It's like, you know, it's deeply ingrained in me. Like, it's just almost always better to sort of talk about something else. And I don't know, it's more entertaining too. You know, I think another thing too is like, I don't know how much this is talked about, but when you talk about poker strategy, it makes the like less knowledgeable players at the table like feel very insecure about it, you know? And so there's just like an endless sea of reasons why like one would choose not to do that, you know? And, you know, again, a lot of it comes back to what we talked about earlier, which is something I can understand and forgive poker players for, but I can still hope that they change for the better, which is like, you know, they're insecure about their play. They want to discuss it. They want to validate it at the table by sort of expressing, you know, their knowledge or whatever on the game, you know, to others. And this is like rather uncommon at high stakes poker, but still actually happens, still even happens to some extent with like players I play with regularly. But like it's from whatever I've heard, it's just like omnipresent, like in the smaller games where like everyone is super insecure, you know. But you know, I still think it's a problem. You know, I still think if you're in a 2-5 or 5-10 game and you have like, you know, some mediocre European player who comes in and like certainly isn't a great player, but is still probably the second or third best player at your table, and he's saying some things that are reasonably intelligent but still probably have issues, like that's just so bad for the game still, you know. And so my hope for poker players is, although part of job satisfaction to such a large extent is prestige, appreciation for a job well done, acceptance by your peers, like you just have to understand that as a poker player, you're not getting that shit. Like you're not. And if you crave it, like you're not going to get what you want anyway. And you're just like, you're doing yourself like a real disservice. And, hopefully many of you out there care enough to also care that you're doing a disservice for the live poker economy at large. So but yeah, so I guess that'd be it. The only other thing I would say about that is there's been a lot of discussion over the years in terms of entertaining the fish, right? You hear this concept a lot. To me, like, I don't know. I think it's like kind of complete bullshit. Like, I think that many poker players are somewhere between like slightly and rather autistic, right? And so they will like attempt to, as they refer to it, entertain the fish. And like instead it just comes across like as desperate, pathetic, pandering. Like usually like these recreational players are pretty intelligent people who found great success in other things that they're doing. They know exactly what you're doing. And like you'd be doing yourself as well as the table, as well as the economy, like a much bigger favor by just shutting the fuck up entirely, or just like occasionally chiming in with something that like doesn't look like you're trying, like I think the best example of someone who like gets it and it's obvious by his like overall poker game being okay, but probably still one of the wealthiest poker players on earth is John Robert Belland, right? Like, why has he been able to consistently build like the biggest and best games on earth for forever, right? Like, I mean, if it was easy, I'd be doing it in LA, right? I'd be playing 600, 1200 plus like 3 days a week for the past 5 years, right? It's not an easy thing to do. There's a ton of variables that go into this, but I can tell you, and this is just my own opinion as someone who's played with him quite a lot over the years, is like there's just no fake to it. Like there's no bullshit. Like people like him because he genuinely likes people, right? Like all the people he plays in games with, like they're hanging out on weekends, they're texting throughout the week, they're going on vacations together. Like, yes, like it's good for his business to be playing with these people, but the reason why these wildly successful people enjoy playing with him, again, this is just my opinion, first and foremost, is because like they can just like sense the genuineness and authenticity in him, and so that's what I would basically advocate poker players do above all else. Don't fucking pander to people. Just be yourself. Just be yourself. And if you yourself, let's be honest, if you yourself are just like one of these guys where you're like, I don't care about talking to this guy, I just want his money. I just want to do whatever I need to do to get as much of his money as possible. Okay, like, whatever. Like, you're going to have some of your own struggles in life. Like, that's a separate thing. But that is what it is. You owe it to, like, that player and yourself to just shut up. Like, you're not helping yourself, Whereas, on the contrary, if you really, like, genuinely like just talking to people and you, like, when you're at a poker table, like, want to be interacting with people completely separate from, like, your ability to earn money from them and whatever, like, those are the people I think that are going to, like, do the best job of creating fun poker environments, And I think it's just been force-fed down too many poker players' throats to be, like, a circus clown or something, when in reality, like, no one should be a circus clown, and only a few people, like, really have the social skills to sort of actively make for a more enjoyable experience at the table. So a tangent, but it was something I was thinking about as you kind of brought up the topic of creating, I guess, like better environments in live poker.
Yeah, I don't really, I just started playing a lot more live poker. And I think when I first started playing, I was trying to talk a bit more at the table because of the whole boring thing. But the games I play, there's enough conversation. And also I noticed that when I talk, I play a lot different.
Right.
I'm not focused in. I'm not paying as much close attention. I'm not as locked in. I'm not picking up on what other people are doing. And that's when I started to realize that if you can generate discussion and conversation at the table and be an entertaining poker player, which I think this is something that you do really well, but also still stay focused in, locked in, pay attention to what's happening. Right. That's a super unique skill and ability that you never really realize that if you play online. But when you start playing live, if you're able to do that, you can start to bring up when a game tightens up or when a game quiets down, you have the ability to then loosen that game back up or learn how to create more action in that game. That seems like an incredible quality to have. And I don't know how you learn that besides just a lot of experience, but that seems like something you specifically do very well from what we've seen on the Live at the Bike shows.
Right. Well, I appreciate that. And again, I hate to sound like a broken record, but I just don't think that's something that could be manufactured, you know, like, and for instance, like in the games I play, like I feel rather confident that like, no matter how much I talk or how little I talk or whatever dumb shit I say, like people aren't going to play any different actually, you know? And so there's no sort of, financial advantage to me sort of acting the way I do at the table and interacting with others the way I do at the table, you know? And I think if you approach it from that standpoint and that's why you're doing it, I think it's going to come across as like really transparent to all but like, you know, the dumbest among us, you know? And then with your point regarding like the challenges of both paying attention and interacting with people, you know, obviously you're spot on. I definitely agree. There is a challenge associated with that. There is a balance you need to try and find with that. But what I would say is like, you know, one of the reasons I think I found a lot of success playing live poker is like, I'm just going to outplay you. And what I mean by that literally is I'm going to play more hours than you. Like if there's a good game, you're going to leave before me, like period. Like I will never leave. Like I will play for days straight, you know, I won't leave. And so of course, part of that like is a skill, like in terms of being able to maintain focus for long periods of time and on and on and on. But like, that's related to what we're talking about here, because it's like, if you're just like focused in on every single fucking hand that you're not in, like you're just going to burn out. You're just going to burn out. And it's just like not nearly as valuable, you know? Like, I just think if you combine like it being good for the game, good for the table dynamics, etc., combined with like your own sanity to be able to just like not be thinking about poker for a minute, combined with your ability to play much longer sessions, I think just like fucking around with people when you're not in hands like more often than people do, I think it has a lot of merit.
That's fascinating right there. The idea that you conserve your mental energy by not necessarily being locked in every single hand.
Totally, yeah. Dude, mental bandwidth is like a very, very real thing that like I've read a lot about and am convinced it's a thing. If you are fucking studying every hand you're not in, like I like firmly believe as the hours go on, like it's going to be harder to execute in the hands you are in.
Yeah, I noticed from my online sessions, there'd always be a period of time where I would stop thinking for about 2 hours, 24 tabling. Like, and then I'd snap into it and be like, oh, where was I at? Okay, let me lock in. That's sort of like the autopilot game, the B game, the B plus, the B minus game sort of thing like that.
Right.
Because I don't think I could have ever really played super long sessions if I was like every single time. And I would bring up a certain topic I brought up in the past that I used to do during my sessions sometimes when I was thinking too much. I was too in my head somehow 24 time, but this isn't the podcast for us. I'm not going to. Okay, sure. But yeah, that's I think that's kind of interesting right there, that I hadn't considered that maybe there's some benefit. And now I think people out there might take that as well. I don't need to focus because I'm being too locked in, and then they won't know, you know what I mean? They don't know how to turn it on and off, sort of thing like that. And it sounds like you have a good handle at your ability to turn it on and turn it off and sort of know what makes you know or think that, okay, it's time to get re-engaged again.
Right. Yeah, I know what you're saying. I don't know. It's not so calculated. I think that's often like a misconception about me, Joey, is a lot of people think that, and I don't mean this in a negative way even, but that like everything I'm doing at the poker table is like this very calculated thing and it all helps me to earn as much money as possible. There was more truth to that like 5 years ago for me, but like at this point, like there's like almost no truth to that. And like so much of what I'm doing in that sense is like, it's just like whatever I think sounds like the most fun, you know? And so oftentimes like just interacting with people and whatnot is like the most fun, you know? I think I think poker players like are like NBA athletes in this one way only, right? I think you only have a certain amount of fucking miles on you, you know? Like people are talking about like LeBron now after the Lakers train wreck of a season that like maybe he's got too many miles on him, right? He's still not even 35. He's got so many miles on him, right? So many minutes of NBA games played. I think that there's so much truth to that with poker as well, you know? And I think especially in live poker, which is a very challenging place in so many ways. And I think that the more miles you put on it, I think the harder it is to continue to be able to play your best. And I've always thought that that's one of the things that's given me the biggest edge is that like I've been a part-time poker player for like almost 5 years now, you know, like I'm playing poker once or twice a week. And for some periods of time, it's even less than that. And so it really does keep the game fresh. It keeps me fresh. Like I personally have struggled immensely to put in time on or off the tables related to poker if I'm not enjoying it very much. But if I am enjoying it a lot, it's like the easiest thing in the world to me, you know? And so this is where just like when I come in, like I never have a plan like where I go, all right, like I'm going to focus in the hands I'm not in 80% of the time or anything. I'm just kind of like doing what sounds like the most fun to me, you know? Maybe that's not the best advice. Again, this is sort of an opinion that like doesn't apply to 99.99% of poker players. And I get it. And I have an awareness of that. But if part of your struggle as a poker player is you don't have the joy for it like you used to, I think like trying to do some shit to make it enjoyable outside the realm of EV, maybe that'll help you, you know?
I guess that speaks to why you might play more hands during a session, is that it might not be plus EV at that moment in time, but maybe it's plus EV in the overall grand scheme of things for your enjoyment, or learning how to play that sort of style just makes it more of an enjoyable experience. I think when I play live PLO, I want to play more hands, because if I went there and played how I'm supposed to play pre-flop, I wouldn't play live poker anymore.
Right.
And well, that might be minus EV in the short term in some spots, but against some players, I would argue it's plus EV. I think that's something that you can turn into a valuable, unique ability that you have as you find yourself more and more deep stack situations. You learn how to navigate those situations better, and then you start to make the game a lot more fun for yourself overall, instead of having to just fucking play top set and nut flush, you know, those sorts of things like that. So I think that's something that you do well, is that you're willing to mix it up with any cards, any time, any hand, any bet size. Like it's the most unpredictable style of all time, it seems like.
Right. No, and I agree with what you're saying. And I feel pretty confident that when you said what you just said, you're going to have like a sea of online players be like, this is the fishiest shit I've ever heard. And you're probably going to have many like good live players think something similar, but no bullshit. Like I actually agree with you. And I think like you could even put like some numbers to this, you know, like if you play like a bit more hands than you usually do, which leads to you making like 0.9x your win rate, right? So like a 10% reduction. But that even leads to like, let's say you enjoy it poker more, that you're playing 20% more hours. Like, well, then you're already making more money, you know? Like, and I think that those numbers could be like way more intense, you know? Like, I think the difference for a lot of people between like playing and not playing is like, if you don't, I mean, almost all people, if they don't want to do something, they're not going to do it, especially not over a long period of time, you know? So I almost feel like it's not even worth like a math equation. It's just like, if you're not enjoying playing, like, I think you're fucked, you know, like you're just going to burn out. You're going to stop playing. You're definitely going to stop putting in like the work outside the poker table and on and on and on, you know? So I feel like doing anything to make it more enjoyable is critically important, including like, you know, maybe playing more hands than is optimal. Maybe like throwing in a big bluff that just gets your blood pumping like a little bit more than is optimal. You know, again, I realize there's probably a lot of people who are going to hear that and be like, this is either a sales pitch from Garrett or it's the fishiest thing I've ever heard. But the devil would be in the details of it. But I think there's plenty of validity to what you're saying.
Yeah, I think my thought on it is that, you know, we already know a certain style of poker works. We know what style of poker is going to work online a lot of ways. We know what style of poker is going to work live. If you play against in good games, you wait for your nut hands and you get value from the bad players. Like we know that style works and wins at poker. But
certainly like in mid-stakes games for sure. Yes.
Right. I think so. And even if you play some higher stakes games and you only play against bad players and the regulars in the game are weaker too, I think there'll be times that you can probably get away with playing like that as well too. Then when you start adding in some better players who are like yourself, you understand that this weaker regular is playing that style, then that leaves it open for you to exploit them. And then, that's where kind of poker gets interesting too. But yeah, I think we all kind of understand a basic style that's going to work and what we need to get better at that basic style to make that a style where we can play against other good players as well too. But I do feel like there's maybe at live poker, I don't know applications online, especially when you're in reg-filled games, you can't play bad pre-flop. It's just you're going to get fucking destroyed.
Right.
But playing in games where other people are playing unoptimal pre-flop, I think that then maybe you can start deviating from what is optimal pre-flop according to a solver or anything like that. And, I think both styles are fine. You can play, you don't have to do that, and you can probably still be a winning player.
Of course. No, I mean, not only I would take that a step further and say, like, you're definitely like not maximizing your EV by not adjusting your pre-flop play in that situation, like, and probably pretty dramatically. And that applies to a million different spots, pre-flop and post-flop. Like, I would say some of like the biggest head scratcher hands that like I'll see, like if I'm watching a stream, is like you'll see like a player who I don't know, I hate using these labels because they're so oversimplified, but like whatever, someone who like when in doubt tries to take like a more game theory optimal approach as opposed to like an exploitative approach. Like there's just many hands I'll see those kind of players where they're playing against recreational players who just like have just like insane like deviations themselves, and I'll see them continue to mix in spots that are just absurd to mix, and vice versa. It just like blows my mind. Now all of this stuff is like really complex, and like knowing if or when or how to use exploits even against great players, which I think is critically important, it's the hardest thing in the world to do. I'm repeating myself from the last podcast. It's what I think makes high stakes live poker so incredibly fun. It's like, it doesn't matter how much fucking homework you do all day, every day. Like, it requires a certain level of like experience and like just like raw intelligence to combine all of these many variables to like maximize your EV against almost everyone in almost every situation, whereas like, I feel like that's much less the case, like in tougher, online arenas. So.
Yeah, we got a lot of people out there. I got another donation as well a little bit ago. I think it was from Jason for $20. Thank you, Jason. Once again, I think Taylor Carroll, I believe you played with Taylor on some LiveAtTheBike show. He did have a couple of donations. Shout out to Taylor. He said he's going to be at Run It Up Reno, which I'll be going up there, Run It Up Reno next week. If any of you guys are going there, feel free to say what's up, say hello. Let's grab a water. I'm not sure if I'm drinking much up there. And Garrett will be recovering from Coachella next week because he's going to a music festival this weekend. And I actually read you had an issue with your girlfriend in that you are obviously a big electronic music fan, and it's Eric Prydz versus your girlfriend wants to see her true love, Ariana Grande, one of the biggest pop stars in the world.
Yeah.
And you're not sure what is GTO in this situation when I'm sure Eric Prydz is one of your favorite electronic music creators. And I don't know how often he's actually tours on the West Coast. So I don't know how often you get to see him. Right. So how do you, Garrett, how does the solver work for you trying to balance this situation and wanting to make your girl happy? And then, this is a tough spot, bro. What's the solution coming to be here?
Right. Yeah, no, I think it's a classic example in terms of like GTO versus exploit,
Exactly.
And so, like, although usually like I focus on exploits, and I think the play there would be like, well, happy girlfriend, happy life. Just do what she says, I was inspired. I was truly inspired by like all the Twitter comments I received saying, fuck it, go to Pritz. Fuck it, go to Pritz. Like, there's only one God. See you at Pritz, etc. So I am going to take the solver approach, which I can only assume would be mixing in this spot. And I will be seeing Pritz, but I will be, for instance, giving up Griffin for like Billie Eilish or some other dumb pop star, So I'm going to do some mixing here. And again, I'm going to take the advice of your followers and go ahead and see that set alone. And we'll all have a magical last set of Coachella Sunday. We'll meet at the shuttle bus and reminisce on it being over, which is always really depressing. But, yeah.
Dare I say GTO approach right there, man.
Yeah.
Technically, Billie Eilish is she's one of the fastest rising pop stars right now, so maybe you'll enjoy some of her songs. I've been listening to some of her songs lately. So
is she not bad, or I haven't listened? I'm just happy I pronounced her name correctly. So
yeah, Billie Eilish. Yeah, I think she's like I don't know, man. There's a conspiracy theory about that, but I won't. This isn't the conspiracy theory show for me. I'm going to save that for another time down the future when I shift to full-time conspiracy theorist YouTuber. Nice. But right now, we're still.
Well, needless to say, I'll be at that set whether I like it or not. So I'll give you a trip report thereafter.
You're gonna enjoy it, man. Yeah, I'm anxious to hear how the trip goes. Obviously, it seems like you're very excited for this weekend to happen. I gotta give a shout out to Jean as well too. Jean, the Live at the Bike host. Yeah. She hosts the high stakes room in there. I love her. She's awesome. She's in the chat too. Shout out to Jean. For sure. I saw JJ from Live at the Bike commentary as well. Big shout out to JJ. He always does a great job on the commentary.
Sure.
And he's always out there too working hard. We got a lot of regulars out here in the chat that know Garrett well or have watched him play or have seen him play. And yeah, man, it seems like, kind of the most entertaining poker player thing. You mentioned Tom Dwan. Do you sort of take inspiration from a guy like a Tom Dwan, how he used to play on television, and then try to incorporate elements of that style into your game? Because it sounds like you're very aware that it's a production, and you also have the desire to put on a show for the people out there too.
Right. Yeah. So as it relates to Tom, like, definitely, like, he was always my favorite poker player. Like, loved watching him. Like, I used to just think like that, he was just like the smartest man in the world. Like, when he was just running so pure on high stakes poker and just everything he did just worked, like, I've actually never played poker with Tom, so I don't really have any input on like how good he actually is or anything like that. But I wouldn't say like I find inspiration in what he does or did or whatever. I mean, he still plays a lot of poker, I guess. I would simply just say that, like, I think we both, like, on the most, like, basic of levels kind of approach the game in, like, a similar fashion, which I think kind of comes down to, like, well, we think that we can profitably or at break even or close to break even play like a lot more hands than some other people. That's really kind of what it comes down to. As it relates to like entertaining fans and things like that, like if I'm being honest, I don't give a fuck like at all about that. Like, I'm just trying to play poker the best I can, and that I think naturally just looks like I'm trying to be an entertainer because the way I play is more entertaining than certain players. And, this is something we've touched on before too, but I think it's critical for me to separate myself from the poker viewing audience. I think it's critical that I like just try and sort of minimize any sort of mental like bandwidth that I have, like, to not really caring what the poker audience thinks about me positively or negatively. As I'm sure you well know, like, poker audiences are a very fickle bunch. If you make a big call correctly, you're brilliant. And if you do the opposite, you're just bad, And so I think it's critically important for my ability to execute to the best of my ability, as well as just like my mental health on and off the tables, to just not really give a fuck about that at all. One final thought about that, and maybe like you can relate to this in terms of like being on Poker After Dark recently, and I don't know if or to what extent you gave a fuck about like what people thought about the way you played, but dude, losing in poker is already so fucking hard. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't want people to think that like I'm chill when I lose. Like, no, it fucking sucks, man. It sucks. It hurts. It never gets easy. Like, does it get better? Does it get easier? Sure. Like, maybe the pain goes from like 100 to a 98 out of 100. Like, it always fucking hurts. It always sucks. And so the last thing I need is like anything else to bring me down further. Like, the only thing worse than like getting fucked up in a high stakes poker game is then like going on your social media or YouTube comment or whatever and reading about how everyone else thinks you suck. Like, that's just like a nightmare. Or even in your own headspace. Like, if you're like fuck, two bad things happened today. I lost $250,000 and people don't think I'm good at poker anymore. Like, you don't need that second thing. Like, how bad is that for your life, you know? And, you know, of course, most people watching don't play poker on streams, but I still think the advice is applicable in that, like, anything others think about your poker game, like, you know, like, it's brutal. Like, if you're getting fucked up in a poker game and you can just like sense everyone like metaphorically licking their lips, you know, they're like, this guy's fucking on one, I'm gonna fucking get him. Like, the last thing you need is to like feel bad about that. The last thing you need is to worry about like what these people are thinking about. Again, these things are very hard, but I think it's a worthwhile goal to try and not give a fuck about that, you know. And I think the biggest challenge, maybe, well, no, I don't want to say that. That's probably overstated. I think a big challenge a poker player faces, and maybe to some extent, even a greater challenge to someone who plays like very high stakes poker, where the amounts you win or lose each day are sort of not connected to real life in any way, is like, you have to learn to digest losses as best as possible, you know. And so much of my work, really throughout my career, has been focused on, during the session as well as after the session, how best I can mourn that loss and then like move forward, you know. And I think worrying about some people watching at home like thinking you misplayed the hand is like almost always going to make it worse, whether you admit that to yourself or not.
So you found a way to block out those comments, and when you read the things on YouTube or read the things on Twitter, which for the most part, I feel like a lot of the comments are generally positive, but I'm sure you still get some comments that say you're a fish or you're a fucking idiot or at least something like that. And it sounds like you just, that doesn't affect you at all.
Right. No, I wouldn't say that. I wish. It's like everything else, you know. These are all just things I work on, you know. You know, I do have somewhat of an active presence on Twitter, you know, so it's not as if like I don't see anything positive or negative people say about me, you know. I just like try my best at least to limit the amount of time I'm even on social media, like do basic things like never read like the comments of a YouTube video or something I'm in, you know. And like if I sense myself like, I don't know, like starting to feel myself a little bit, if you know what I mean, I just like fucking shut it down. You know, I just shut it down. You know, I remember the first time I played on Poker After Dark, I just ran like outrageously hot and just got like hundreds of texts, you know, and I was looking at them all and just giving everyone the heart like emoji, you know, like whatever the fuck. And I was like, dude, let's be honest, I was feeling myself on this day. For what? For running super hot in a poker game for 5 hours, you know? And so it's like moments like that where I'll then like call my girlfriend and like I'll be like, what am I doing right now? Like, why do I give a fuck about this? You know, what I do know is like I'm gonna lose this amount of money like on a stream once, and that's not gonna feel any good, you know. And I don't want to deal if this is gonna feel good, that's gonna feel like shit. So I need to try and distance myself from it. So long story short, it's always like a work in progress, but yes, like I do have like some awareness that the public more often than not you know, like is supportive of me, and that's cool and that's fun. But for my own ability to play well, I try not to worry about it.
Yeah, I remember that first time on Poker After Dark, you think you won about $400,000 or $500,000 or something absurdly ridiculous like that. So that was your debut as well too, I believe. So I can understand you having I mean, maybe it's good to feel that way sometimes too, and sort of cherish the moment when you have it. You put in a lot of hard work to get to that point, and you have exceptional results, even if it was variance on your side. Maybe there still is some merit to enjoying that moment, feeling that moment, and then moving on from it instead of just saying, okay, like I don't want to get too full of myself, but having that awareness, okay, I can feel this way now, but then tomorrow it's back to the office and back to work, and then I got to get over it. It's a new session.
Right. I think what you're saying like has a ton of merit as well. I think both like seem super reasonable. Like anything else, probably like somewhere in between, maybe makes some sense. But again, for me, I'm just so obsessed with dealing with the pain of loss that like that supersedes like everything else when it comes to poker for me, you know. Like I don't know. I think to elaborate on that much would just like be just like repeating myself. But like, if you're like one of these guys where you're playing and you're stuck 100 big blinds, you know, an hour in, and you're like upset, you like are upset about that loss. I just think you're at a competitive disadvantage to the guy who just dedicates everything to feeling as little as possible in terms of negative emotions or thoughts. You know, that hour into it. And I think that applies between sessions to a very large extent as well. So.
It makes sense. Makes sense to kind of, I mean, it kind of goes back to the idea of suppressing emotion in general. And the robotic people are the people that are able to have success at high stakes because they don't care about the wins and losses, and the people that care about the wins and losses. So I guess if you are taking that much emotion away from a winning session, maybe that is going to impact you negatively. So if you take away too much, then maybe on the other side, when you're losing, you're just letting it fucking impact you so hard that you're not able to regroup. Then yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And it probably is somewhere in between instead of this extreme here, kind of like that.
I mean, if you can do it, you being anyone, you know, if you can celebrate your wins and be chill with your losses, like, I don't know. I think you found the secret to life, really, right? Like, if you can just cherish all the great things and like just be just like a sponge of emotion when good shit's going, like when things are going great, and but yet like, you know, like just build this wall to protect yourself when they're going wrong. Like, I have no idea how to do that, but I greatly admire anyone who can, you know.
I mean, maybe that's how some of these people stay around for so long is they're able to do that. That's like their secret. That's what, when you wonder what makes this person so great, well, if they're great at that quality, seems like a pretty valuable thing for a poker player to be able to do.
For sure, absolutely.
But I don't know many of those people. Maybe they are and they don't tell me, but I
can't think of one person, honestly, that fits that description.
It's a dream person that doesn't exist, you know, like maybe Dola Brunson's like this, but I don't know. It seems like when he loses it affects him. So
yeah, I can tell you what, I know a lot of very successful high stake poker players who like I legitimately know well, and they like don't feel much when they win, and when they lose, it's just like devastation each time, you know. So I know the opposite's very easy to accomplish, but
yeah. Shout out to Zitro as well. He donated $19.99. Thank you, Zitro. Zachary Weatherford is always. Zach, man, much love. I always see you in here, brother. Also donated to the cause in here. Maybe we have to upgrade something here. Maybe we get a new background or some of all these donations, guys. We got to put this money back in place. So maybe we put a new poster on the wall or something like that, or we make a wall of fame in the back, or I don't fucking know. We'll figure out something kind of fun to do. I saw something.
We'll discuss.
Yeah,
something funny, you know.
Yeah, something funny. Maybe not like Doug, where he posts negative $2 million graphs of people he doesn't like. I probably won't do something like that.
I mean, dude, that shit's so funny. Like, I gave Doug like one slightly negative comment, so I'll give him like another pause. He's so fucking funny, man. Like, so like I watch so little poker content, and just like so many of his videos, dude, I'm just like on the floor laughing, you know, like and like the subtlety of these graphs and shit like that, like. I mean, it's no surprise what an incredible poker player he is, because like he's clearly just like brilliant at whatever he does, you know, and he's an exceptional content creator for sure.
Yeah, I think poker world misses him right now. You know, the people we're left with. I mean, he's kind of a unique style to content creation, whereas now the vloggers are all pretty similar in terms of, you know, how people they are and what they bring, and the message they're trying to spread for the most part tends to be the same sort of message. Whereas Doug was bringing a very unique angle. He brought the credibility, he brought the expertise, he brought all these things to the table. He brought the willingness to say something negative about someone and deal with the ramifications that do come from that as well too, which is a very rare thing, especially in poker. In poker, it's a very rare thing. So it's
dude. So much respect for that. I think he's such a beast. He just says whatever he wants. He deals with the awkward conversations, the hate mail, whatever he gets, like probably in response. Like, that's beast as fuck. Agreed.
Yeah. And, but I do unfortunately think that was a big catalyst for him leaving poker as well too. So because he dealt with those things, and at some point it's just like, well, fuck this. You know, you sort of ask yourself, why am I not getting the support that I think I should be getting for the things that I've said, not understanding that the things that you've said are impacting people with personal relationships with these people that you're talking about. So while you see it this way from a logical standpoint, their friends and the rest of the community that they might be friends with don't see it that way. And I think that's a big thing that may have gotten, you know, that came to head in terms of Doug sort of wondering why he wasn't getting respect from certain people in the industry and desiring that respect, but just not getting it, and didn't seem like he could do much about it. So I think that was, and then plus the crypto craze at the exact right time. I think that was a big reason of what happened and why he's not doing content no more.
Sure. Yeah. I think that's just a tough thing in general. I think like as people, we like want to fit in, you know? And so like conflict is like, of course it's like it's part of the human experience and has been forever, but like I'll at least just speak for myself. Like I don't feel good about it, you know? Like, so I'll give you an example. Like in the past, I used to do like a lot more vigilante shit, like at the live poker table, like, you know, like the scum, like pro who would always like accidentally forget his straddle and shit, you know, like I would yell at that guy and I'd be like, hey dude, like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, you're not fooling anyone. Like, there's a reason why everyone else puts their straddle on and you forget 94% of the time, you know, especially if it's the spot where I'm in the restroom or zoning out or whatever, because like no one else is going to call you out, you know? This isn't like really a claim to fame. If anything, like I'm a bit ashamed to admit this, but like I do like a lot less of that stuff now because it's just so bad for like my peace. It's so bad for the quality of my life, dude. Like after I have like an episode like that, a conversation like that, whatever, like I just don't feel good about myself, dude. Like I just am so allergic to conflict naturally that like over time, like I like have avoided it more and more and more and found like I'm just like a much happier person because of it, you know? I think that is like not good in terms of like if the primary goal is doing what needs to be done to try and create good games and help the poker economy as a whole and whatever, but you know, admittedly for my own peace, like I feel a lot better about it. And I'm not going to try and pretend to get in Doug's head or anything like that. The only thing I would say is if I created the number of enemies that he created through all of his content creation that like was just like pure hilarity and entertainment for someone like myself, I too would like want to get the fuck out, you know, but maybe for different reasons, maybe only somewhat overlapping, like whatever. I just know that like I just avoid conflict like the plague, you know. Someone wants to ask me about Donald Trump, I'm like, who's that? You know, like I don't even want to fucking talk about it, you know. Like I'll talk about it with like a close friend or something. Otherwise, like all I want to do is give the guy next to me a fist bump and say like, you know, let's order another beer or let's talk about the Lakers or whatever else, you know. So
yeah, I've kind of, you know, I was always that way. People always say I'm super in the middle. I stand on the fence in a lot of my opinions about things on the podcast, and that's generally because I like to think I'm open-minded about things, so I try to see things from both sides. And I don't oftentimes when you do sort of take a stance like that, you are causing a conflict. And I've seen how others in the community and outside the community have reacted to those moments for myself, and it makes you it makes you feel awful. Like I never feel happy about any, like when if I say something negative about somebody else like that, I feel awful about it. I really do. Especially when you hear from that person how that made them feel or how these things made them feel. And even if they are doing something that, you know, a little out of line, man, it just kind of drives me a little fucking nuts when I'm in that mode of thinking that way. And that's something that I picked up a little bit from Doug.
Yeah. No, me too, man. I've like
things, you know.
I'm not trying to say like I don't bang people. Fuck, like I probably bang people like to you on public airwaves. Probably already did it today. Like, you know what I mean? Like I just know I like basically always regret it thereafter. You know, that's like what I do know about it. And yeah, I don't know. That's I guess that's the gist of it. I was gonna say something else, I can't remember, so whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think if people want to do that, there are people that aren't like that and they want to cause conflict and they like that, they embrace it, they enjoy it, and they can fucking go for it. You know, if that's their cup of tea. And I guess what they have to realize is that it's going to get you, you know, you're not going to get respect from people that you want to get respect from. You're not going to be accepted by people that you want to be accepted by.
Right.
If that's something you desire. Some people don't desire that and they don't need that. But I think a lot of people do desire that, especially people that have success at what they do. They want to also have respect a lot of times for what they do, and
right,
you causing that sort of conflict, especially in a small community like the poker world. It's going to be hard to get that from some people, which I think other people are going to go through that too. So, you know, that's a big reason for sort of taking a more inline approach to things and not necessarily causing any controversy or anything like that, is because you don't deal with much conflict. So I can see both sides of the situation, why you want to go with what strategies for there too. So
For sure. Yeah, agreed.
One tweet you put up the other day about what Justin Bonham was at the Poker Awards, he basically talked about, I think maybe you can probably summarize it a little better, but you put on Twitter, I love what Justin Bonham said tonight, especially compared to others who couldn't be bothered parenting at all. Bang, bang. Few things annoy me more than poker players who are impressed with themselves for winning a lot of money, oblivious to the infinite ways they've run hot to get there.
Right. Yeah, I mean, great example, right? Like, there I go, like bang, bang people. Like, how many other people could I be referring to? There were only like so many other people that won, and only a few of them said basically nothing and got off stage, you know? Like, it's like after, it's like, what am I doing? Like, it's just not even necessary to bang, bang people, but like, it's hard not to. I occasionally do it, you know, like, these are people that I met, played with before, like, whatever. It's just like, I'd rather avoid the conflict, but yeah, in regards to that, like, tweet as a whole, like, you know, Bonomo, I guess, is like a somewhat controversial figure in the poker world, and I think like some people sort of responded as such. Like when I wrote that, I'm not so familiar with what his current reputation is or anything like that, so I don't want to speak on that, but I just like watched those awards, and I just thought like what he said was like very self-aware and like just very kind, really, you know, like here you have like what the person who had the greatest year in the history of poker or something. Can we say that? Like, I guess like in public games, obviously there's people in private games that probably have that number crushed. And like, instead of just like being like, yeah, I'm brilliant, like I got here because of hard work. Like, to me, like when someone says like, I got here because I worked hard, like I just want to punch him in the face. Like I really fucking do. Like, it's like, yes, people should work hard, like, and like whatever, but like to me, when you say that in like a spot where you're already being honored, like you're just saying like, yeah, I'm the man, you guys can go fuck yourselves. Like that's really what I see, is like, this is just a product of my hard work. Like, I don't know, to me, like, especially if you mean it, you know, if someone doesn't mean it, obviously that's like another thing entirely, but if you mean it, he talked first and foremost, and it's something I think about all the time. He goes, well, the first way I ran hot as fuck is like, I was born in the United States as a male, white. Okay, like if you are a white male born in the United States, you have run so incredibly fucking hot. And I bring that up because that's probably a decent percentage of people even watching this, you know? So let's start there. And like, obviously beyond that, like really any Western country, of course, the same concept applies, you know? Then he just talks about like the healthy upbringing that like, that he was raised in, with the focus on, you know, goal setting and academia and this and that. And you know, the same is true for me, you know, like I had very, very little like trauma in my childhood. And it's like, to even get to that point, like you've just run so incredibly hot. And I think people who want to give themselves like all the credit for where they're at, you know, like he uses a term, he's like self-made. He goes, I'm not self-made. Like, I couldn't fucking agree more with that, you know? Like, yes, it's true. Like, my net worth when I started playing poker was zero, and my parents never contributed a dollar to it. But I'm not fucking self-made by my calculation, like in any sense of the word, you know? So many things had to happen for me, you know, to get to that point. And I think poker should, but often does the opposite for some reason, like allow people to see the insane like level that luck or variance has on one's life. But usually it's like the opposite, right? Like people run hot for a while and they're like, yeah, well, it's because I'm brilliant. Yeah, it's because I worked for it. I earned it, you know? When like, dude, like way more than someone who's like selling medical equipment where there's a ton of variance too. This person should recognize, I think, like just how incredibly lucky they are. Like if they have a big session, let's say they're playing high stakes poker one day and it eventually gets down to them and a fun player, and the fun player's tilted and has a bunch more money on him and wants to keep playing until they lose it all. Like, and eventually you Kool-Aid the fuck out of him and you get it. Do you know how many ways you ran hot for that to happen on that particular day? Like I could list, and I won't, for the sake of your audience, like 25 fucking ways you ran hot for that to happen on that day, you know? But I don't know. I think a lot of times people struggle with that awareness, but like when you recognize that, like I think it's very humbling, and I think it also just makes it so much easier to connect with others, you know? Like almost all my close friends like you know, like make, you know, middle sort of income salaries. Like many of my poker friends are guys that you know, are barely scraping by playing small games, because like I don't know, I feel like I often connect with them and the grind and whatever more than some like very successful players who think that like they got to where they were almost entirely as a function of work ethic. Okay, that was like a really long rant, but I do have to give like the caveat to it, and it's very important.
Okay.
With that said, like, yes, like I take a lot of pride in my work ethic. Yes, like I like whenever I think about like who I want to be, like the main differentiator I want to have versus almost anyone I know is like I'm gonna work harder than everyone. And so of course the easy question is like, well, what the fuck? These are like basically polar opposite sort of thought processes, right? But to me they're not. I think it's totally reasonable to understand the incredible role luck has in your life, but also recognize that like some things are in your control. And in fact, the luck aspect, of course, is totally out of your control. So you can either float along all day, every day, being like, well, it doesn't really fucking matter what I do. Luck's gonna have like the primary role, you know? Or you can say, well, I'm well aware luck's gonna have a big part in this, but like I'm gonna do fucking everything I can to enhance my life. I'm gonna do everything I can to make my life day to day like most enjoyable. And that's really like I think helped me a lot to defeat depression too. Like this sort of like existential, like none of this shit fucking matters, it's all like luck anyway, is a great way to stay in bed and stay depressed. If you want to fucking lie in bed, that's a great fucking thought process to have, you know? But I think the higher level of enlightenment is knowing that much of what happens to you is out of your control, but still an awareness that much of it is in your control. And like also, and this is kind of dark, but it's always the way I've looked at it, like what the fuck else you gonna do, man? Like what else you gonna do other than like wake up and like dedicate yourself to one thing or five things or whatever? To me, that sounds like a way better day, a way better life than just like letting it like waste away, you know? And I don't know, you see it all. I've seen it all, like in poker. I've seen people who think it's all skill. I've seen it all. People who think it's all luck. And I'll tell you what, like the people who think it's all skill, I think on average are like way happier people at least, you know? So if nothing else, like I think it's like a good mindset to have to be able to like live with more peace at least. But like I just can't handle that shit because I refuse to just like be oblivious, you know? So I try and like fuck with both sides of those very conflicting thought processes that I do not think are mutually exclusive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think my big takeaway from this speech and then kind of what you said is just that, you know, because you hear kind of people talk about that all the time when they talk about it. So if you bring it up every single time you ever say anything, I mean, at what point do you like, is that like, do you start talking about something else? Because I feel like a lot of people out there are aware of this as well, but it's not something they want to harp on for the sake of, you know, sort of letting other people know that, hey, I don't think this way, think this way is the right way to think. I'm going to keep saying this over and over again. So that's what I think about, because I try to be very aware of that as well. But also, you know, you try to think about the things that you do well, as you mentioned, like the hard work, the work ethic, the study ability, the sacrifice ability to do these things like that. So while it's not all hard work or not all this or not all that, I feel like recognizing that you are able to do that, you have a gift to be able to do that in some sort of ways is also positive too. But also recognizing as well that we are very lucky to be in this place in the first place too. But it's kind of like at what you know balance is that every time you speak versus talking about other things as well too? Because I feel like a guy like Justin is going to have a lot of good knowledge and wisdom to be able to give to people out there like that. But if every time he's going to give that message out there too, that might not be the most effective way to get people to buy into what you're saying and what you're trying to sell to them, which the messages that we give are what we're trying to sell to them. So I think it could be done maybe in a little bit more of effective way for people not to have the reaction that they have sometimes to those things.
Right. No, yeah. And I think that's totally fair. I think a lot of the criticism, right or wrong, from the little I read, is like people just basically calling bullshit, right? If we want to just like keep it real, like a lot of people, and I don't know him. I have really no opinion on it. I just like am a guy who watched another guy give like a couple minute speech, and to me it seemed like very genuine and spot on, and in that way, like I appreciated it. Like the Alcoholics Anonymous, like Narcotics Anonymous, like I believe it's called the Serenity Prayer. I hope I'm not misspeaking on it, but like to me that's like it's so simple, it's so common, but I think that it's just like such a great guide for life, like, and in summation, it's like a bunch of shit is gonna happen that's out of your control. Let it fucking go. A bunch of shit is gonna happen that's in your control. Like, handle it. Execute the stuff that's in your control. And I think if you're not really doing both of those things, I don't know. I think it's just tougher. I think it's tougher. Like the guy who thinks it's all skill, like when he goes on like a downswing, I don't even know how he deals with that. That's what I'm saying. Like I think blending these two thought processes is just key for living just like a more peaceful life, let alone like connecting with others and whatever else. So.
Do you think ignorance is bliss, Garrett? What do you think about it? It sounds like you don't think that's saying you don't want to be the ignorant one. You'd like to be more aware and deal with the ramifications of that awareness and try to deal with that and get better that way. But do you think ultimately it might be better to be ignorant of a lot of these things and not necessarily be so focused on them?
Yeah, this might surprise you. I'm going to just go with yes. Usually I fucking give you some bullshit gray area to every answer. I'm just going to go straight yes on this one. I think it'd be great to just be like totally ignorant and like just be like have like a set of beliefs that like I truly believed in, and like under this very specific assumption that like as a result of this ignorance I lived with like peace every day. If that were the case, like I would much rather be ignorant, but the reality is like I am who I am and I can give you even a very specific example that probably isn't all that controversial on a poker interview, but like the concept of God, right? Like I would love to believe in God, dude. I'd fucking love it. Like so much research shows people that believe in God are happier. People specifically that like are involved in an organization that like prays to God, like church, allows for social connection, and on and on. There's all these great things that like are good for like happiness levels associated with religion. I would love to do it, but I just cannot. I cannot like make peace with the fact that we've been fucking killing each other since the beginning of time nonstop in the name of fucking God. I watched Jim Jeffries the other day, this comedian, he gave a special on it, and like he's so funny, he's so insightful, and one thing he says is he goes like, yeah, like who hasn't been killing people forever? Atheists have never been going around killing people in the name of fucking nothing, and I just thought that was like so incredibly like insightful. And even like being raised Jewish and wanting to support the Jewish community, if for no reason than like the Holocaust fucking happened, which I think in and of itself is a reasonable reason to at least maintain some ties to the Jewish culture if you were raised Jewish. Like to me, like on a moral level, it's just very hard for me to support any sort of organized religion where like, yeah, the most reform or liberal versions of it are doing very little, if any, harm to the world, but the most conservative or orthodoxy, as it's said in Judaism, like these are people that are in many cases, negatively affecting the world in some ways. Obviously you don't have Orthodox Jews, like, there's not a bunch of Orthodox Jewish terrorist organizations, but but nevertheless, like, I think all of the most extreme versions of all organized religion are oftentimes doing more harm than good for the world, and oftentimes, like, you know, like not treating like all people with respect, namely like what, women, homosexuals, minorities, etc. All people that I think we should be doing whatever we can to lift them up instead of fucking keep them down with like fucked up traditions from thousands of years ago, you know.
So how do you think that idea of what you just said ties in with the idea of being ignorant to ignorance is bliss? How do you think that idea about...
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Fuck, I do this a lot, dude, where I like have these thoughts in my head and I don't fucking tie them together. Yeah. Like what I'm saying is, like, if I believed in God, I think like I would be happier. And to me, like, believing in God is a form of ignorance. I'll just fucking spell it out, like, just like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I went to Catholic schools all my life, but I can't say that I really ever believed in God or believed in the idea, because my parents sent me to, you know, my mom might watch this now, but sent me to the CCD, and I had to go to church every Sunday. So I don't know if it's a function of just being told by my mother I had to do this for 10 to 15 years of my entire life. And then finally, once I got out of high school, I'm like, you know, fuck this. Like, I don't know if it has to do with that or if it has to do with just not really paying attention to what exactly is being said in church or in religion class in high school or anything like that. But it does seem like the people that do believe in God do seem to be happier. And so, like, they have a purpose, they have a mission, their life means something, they dedicate themselves to God, which makes sense why so many people end up, you know, reforming their life, because they find a belief. Maybe before that they didn't believe in anything, and now they found something to believe in, some sort of purpose, some sort of answer out there, and then okay, now they feel like they have something to work towards like that. So it does seem like it is a helpful thing for many people out there.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, in that respect, like, you know, honestly, like, I'm pretty supportive of like of that in a general sense. Like, I have like some friends that are very religious even, and like not only like would I never like try and like preach to them or sell them on like atheism or something like that, but I'm like very supportive of them, like on an individual level. Like, you know, I always want people to just make choices that like allow them to live happier lives, you know. And so yeah, that's that. And then I don't know, like, yeah, in a general sense, like, I think the world would be a better place without organized religion, but it is what it is, and I have no interest in like leading the charge or whatever otherwise, you know. Like, I hope it doesn't come across that way when I said that, like, to you now, in terms of like believing in God in my just my own humble opinion is ignorant. Like, I'm not trying to like convert people to non-believers, just kind of spouting out a bunch of nonsense, you know. So,
yeah, I sometimes think about the idea of talking about subjects or topics that we aren't that educated about in terms of related to other areas of life. And you mentioned, like, they say basketball players stick to basketball, people stick to what you know and stuff like that. But I think this is kind of how you learn and how you formulate better thoughts on your ideas, is to talk them out, to get feedback from somebody else. And then maybe your opinion changes or it doesn't change or whatever. But I do feel like this is the way that we all get better, and better in whatever way you want to consider better. I think everyone has different definitions for better. Sure. But yeah, this is an important thing that we do to formulate better ideas, better thoughts, progress our mindset, learn more about the world, and learn more about how we think about things.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, that's how humanity's evolved, just like talking to each other. Definitely.
Yeah. But even though we're not, you know, we're here talking about religion, obviously I don't know anything about religion. I'm not pretending. I don't fucking understand the slightest thing when it comes to religion. And I don't know how well educated you are, but I'm sure a lot of people out there aren't very well educated as well. Maybe they become interested in it now, or they go research it or follow up on things. And, you know, maybe I'll go down the religion rabbit hole on my next YouTube deep dive on my beanbag chair over there in the living room. So this might be the next topic I decide to research here.
There you go. I know you branched off to MMA with wild success. Maybe your next one should just be like, does God exist? You know, maybe that shit will just blow up, dude.
The thing about those subjects is they're so polarizing that the engagement will be off the charts. Like, anytime you can have two sides that are just fucking ferocious about how they believe, you're going to get something that's explosive. And you can use a strategy where you purposely pick that topic and then choose to skew the video towards the side that's going to be even more relentless.
Right.
You can choose to keep it a completely subjective video, and then you're going to have these from both sides, and you're going to have some people hating on it because it was so subjective and you weren't taking the stance they agreed with. Or you can go the other side, which is going to real fucking anger people out there. And that is some content strat. If you ever want to know for this, you could use that for any form of platform, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, or YouTube. But yeah, man, I don't know. I've been deep in the lab for marketing ideas and how to get engagement for things. I don't necessarily do a lot of the things I learned, but it's all in the mind. But yeah, videos like that work really well if you go look on YouTube and especially any divisive topic like religion. I mean, you basically said that if you believe in God, there's some people out there, when you say that, they're going to feel some type of way about that because they think that God saved their entire life and they wouldn't be here without God. So they're going to fight you tooth and nail because that's their personality, sort of thing like that.
Right. Yeah. And that's like, that's kind of the risk I run of even like saying something like this on a podcast such as yours. It just gets like such a wide audience. Like there's going to be backlash from that, like guaranteed, like if it's people on Twitter, like saying something to me, like whatever, that's fine. But, there's people I play poker with regularly that are very religious. They're not going to like that either, And so it's an interesting sort of thing. Like, well, what's my move? Should I just like not even like spout these thoughts out loud? I think there's certainly some merit to that. It obviously coincides with what I was talking about, like living with as little conflict as possible, but I think there's another side to that too. That maybe speaking up on certain things that you believe in or whatever, maybe there is some merit to that. I mean, if nothing else, I will say that like I do love just conversation. I do love sort of discussing the theory of a lot of these things. The problem in practice is that very few people want to do that. Most people just like want to talk at each other and tell the other one why they're wrong. Which again, that's fine. That's like part of what makes people. But that sounds a lot less interesting to me. And so in some ways it's probably would have been better for me not to say believing in God is ignorant. But hey, I did say that even though I try not to bang, I always just fucking bang all the time anyway, so like it's like whatever, man.
Well, let's ask some poker related questions here for a little bit.
Yeah, I like that. That sounds a little safer for sure.
I got a couple on the list here. Who is the person that you don't like playing against the most?
I don't really like him on a personal level, or he's such a good player, or what do you mean?
However, the person that's at the table that you wish wasn't at the table necessarily, that you play, whether you're, it could be a form of scare. I've seen this question in multiple forms. I'm trying to remember the exact wording that somebody used. But yeah, basically the person that scares you the most, that you fear the most at the table.
Yeah. Like I said, I've tried really hard to not dislike people at the poker table. And so even a couple people that like the way we view the world is very different, and it's made it so I don't really like them in the past. Like, I don't know, I've worked pretty hard to find like an acceptance and understanding about them. So there isn't like anyone that I could think of that I play poker with like regularly that's that I like, really dislike or whatever. As it relates to like poker skill, yeah, I don't know. I'll kind of plead the fifth again, not like because I don't want to answer or something, but that's just not really a thing for me. I don't really know how to answer that without sounding like a bit braggadocious. But like, I don't know. That's just not really like the way it goes. Like, I put in like my work, like you've put in your work. Like, I don't know. Let's just play. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not like afraid of anyone or anything like that. And like, if I was like playing in like I would always make sure I'm playing in a game that like I'm comfortable like losing what I do. So if it's someone that's just like plays super raw and puts you to the test all the time, like even then, like that's still fine. So there's no one that really like scares me in that way. And I think that's probably like the mindset like you want to go into when you're at a poker table. Like when you're playing poker, like if you have self-awareness, like you know, there's 9 people at the table, you're probably not the best one, mathematically speaking, you know? So if you have like an awareness of, you know, the 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever guys that are better than you, I think it's fine to like, make some changes like strategically, like maybe some hands that like are close to 0 EV, maybe just folding them or something like that. That could make some sense, but to just like avoid people entirely or to like have an active fear of someone at the poker table is like, that sounds like a big problem. I wouldn't recommend like anyone do that. And I hope like anyone I play against, like, I don't know, if they're doing it right, they shouldn't be thinking that way about me either, you know?
Yeah, I'm only scared of one person at the poker table, and that's Poker Sasha in the chat, because if I stack her, I'll you know, I might get yelled at, and then if the vice versa, if she stacks me, she'll talk about it for the rest of our lives. So it's like this very tough spot I'm in where there's a no-win situation. And if I stack her and bring it up, I actually didn't stack her; she stacked me.
Dude, I totally get it. Like a girl you have a romantic relationship with, like you have all the reasons in the world to fear that person. Like I am fucking terrified of my girlfriend, you know? We're going through the fucking Coachella set times list. You know, I'm like, all right, here we got Bass Nectar, Kid Cudi, you know, like, what do you think? You know, like basically like I dedicate my life to not getting yelled at. You know what I mean? Like I just don't want to get yelled at, you know? And I mean, you've met my girlfriend. She's like a very sweet, soft-spoken girl. So I'm like, you know, being 99% serious or sarcastic. Sorry, Freudian slip there, maybe. But but like
you like the yell. Ah, okay. You like the battle a little bit, maybe.
No, but I mean, I get it, man. If my girlfriend played poker, I would just fucking auto check fold every single hand, you know? Like, it's just not worth it. I get it.
It'd be a tough spot right there.
For sure, yeah.
Shout out to Gene. Gene donated $19.99 on YouTube as well. Shout out to Gene from
Live. That's a beast donation. The first guy who started the $19.99. That's got to be a very, very strong poker player. And the masses followed him, you know?
I don't know what you're thinking. You know, I once again appreciate it though. You know, I always see like the streamers. I watch the Fortnite guys, and they get donations every second. Sometimes it's like $500 and things. I'm just like, oh my god, this is like every time I get any money from someone else, I'm just like, you know, oh my, it's crazy because poker, no one's giving you money. It's such a foreign. You got to earn your money when you play, whether it's by a bad play, getting really lucky, whatever. You know, it's just such a different atmosphere than someone be like, hey, I'm choosing this random time to give you this amount of money. It's
I get it, man. Honestly, I love it. I think it's cool. Like what faith it like allows you to have in humanity, you know? People know they can get this content for free, and they're like, you know, paying you for like the hard work you put in anyway. Like that's pretty cool, you know? I like that. I know it's kind of corny, but whatever. It's cool. There's this movie I saw recently. It's called People's Republic of Desire. It's in a documentary, and it's like in Chinese, right? And it just like shows these like streamers in China, because China's like a big streamer thing. I don't know if you know anything about this. And like the big streamers like make like crazy amounts of money, like in tips and like, or donations or whatever you want to call it. And then like the big donators like are also like very famous because they like donate all their money like to streamers. And it's like this huge, crazy, wild industry, and there's all this corruption, and it's run by big business. And anyway, I'm going off, of course, on an absurd tangent, but it was a really interesting movie. And if you think like the YouTube streaming game is like cutthroat, competitive, profitable, etc. in the US, dude, multiply it by like 1,000, and that's China. And it was like a fascinating watch that I knew like nothing about prior. So
that's on Netflix, right? I think I saw that.
I'm not sure if it is actually. I got it through other means that I won't say out loud, but yeah, it probably is.
I know I saw a preview for this someplace, but I can't remember where I saw it. It might have been like on the hip hop forum I go on to. By the way, are you going to see Kid Cudi, or are you going to see Bass Nectar?
We're going Bass Nectar. That one wasn't like the best example because we both were leaning towards Nectar, you know. But there was a ton of other ones where like, dude, like, I think like there was one spot where she like kind of preferred someone else, but didn't really care that I won. And then just every other spot, like I let her win, except for, like I said, Eric Pritz will just separate, you know? So it's just not worth the fight, man.
Have you ever listened to Kid Cudi's music?
Love him. Absolutely love him. Yeah. So that was like a pretty tough spot for me, because Kid Cudi was like my teenage years, and then Bass Nectar is like the last like 5 years of my life, you know, like not like all my music is like Bass Nectar, like bassy type shit or something. But like many others in the electronic music community, I do love Bass Nectar. So.
The movie was called People's
Republic of Desire, I believe, but I could be mistaken on that. Yeah. I've seen like 100 better documentaries than that. I'm always so bad at remembering, but that one just reminded me of what you're talking about, and what a crazy world like the content creation world is, you know.
What do you think? This is kind of another list over here. We got another donation from Taylor. Joey, here's $10. You can buy another Reno, or you can buy a Mickey sweater and wear it on stream. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with Run Up Reno or streams over there. I don't have any plan to play on any streamed game at Reno, and I don't have much plan to play Nolan Hold'em as well either. So we'll see if we play some Parliament up there, but I don't know about that. What do you think? You mentioned earlier about the 5, 10, 10, 20 games, and you know, what do you think something that most players out there need to improve on to sort of break through the next level? Something that you see from players out there, a mistake that they're making, whether it's at the table or mentally or anything of that nature.
Yeah, probably the biggest one, as always. Again, we've already hit on it today, but it's just like your mental game as a whole. Just like your ability to keep your emotions in check and execute like to the best of your ability, like is just got to be the biggest thing for like everyone. Like the difference between people's A game and D game is like just so vast. It's like next level, you know. And I see it amongst great players and very weak players alike. The difference between playing well and playing very poorly is like truly unbelievable. And so if you could just cut out the bottom, where like if you're losing, you're like playing decent instead of terrible, like that's going to just be the biggest deal in the world to one's win rate. And then beyond that, and I don't really want to elaborate much, but I would just say there's like a variety of specific spots in poker where the vast majority of players are under bluffing. That would be kind of the gist of it. And,
so like, I guess when you say mental game, is there a specific area of focus, do you think, or is it just because, you know, a mental game, obviously it spans wide. It could be going to therapy and that helping out the mental game. It could be active thought in terms of why you can't handle a losing session or how to get over losing. You know, there's a lot of aspects of the mental game. Maybe just figuring out how to block out everything around you and focus on poker could be a part of the mental game too.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely everything. Like what I'm referring to, like very specifically, is like whatever you need to do in your own head to like gather your thoughts together to continue to be able to execute again, if not like as well as at the beginning or when you're winning, like at least as close to it as possible, you know? And so some people that may require nothing at all, you know, some people that may require fucking 2 laps around the casino. Some people that may require some meditation. Some people that may require like inpatient, like therapy, 40 hours a week, you know, like some people that may require, you know, like antidepressants. Some people it may not. Like that. I wouldn't even know like how to begin answering that, and everyone's really going to be different. But I do think that the vast majority of things that might make one a better poker player from a mental game standpoint is probably also going to improve the quality of their life day to day. And so it's interesting, like I always like did all this shit like first and foremost to improve the quality of my life day to day. But most other poker players who I've talked to who've made strides in that did that for different reasons. They're like, well, I want a better mental game so I can make more money. And then they're like, hey, by the way, I fucking smile a lot more, you know? And who cares, right? However you get there is how you get there, you know? And a lot of people need like a financial incentive to do things. And if that helps you to get to where you want to go, so be it.
I like it. I like it a lot. I'm going to put that up there. We got a lot of good moments in this podcast, Garrett. A lot of wisdom out there, whether it comes to the mental side of things, poker side of things, non-poker side of things. And I feel like all these things sort of tying together is when you get better at the mental aspect of outside of poker, you also get better at it inside of poker too.
Right.
You know,
right. Yeah, for sure.
Kind of can go a few different ways out there. We had a music related question here I'll get to because it's a little bit It's a little bit of I don't know the word I'm looking for right now, but top 5 EDM artists yet to see power rankings. Brandon Welsh says. I'm curious who those five people are. So because I feel like
that I've yet to see. I don't know. I don't know. I'd have to spend like too much time thinking about it. But one that comes to mind, I'll just say it just because it's like I'm going to Coachella. I'll just say Daft Punk. You know, like they had this set in Coachella 2006. They had this pyramid. It's like one of the most legendary, famous sets in Coachella history. And then like soon after, they kind of dropped off the face of the earth. And every year there's like these rumors that they're coming back, but they're never fucking coming back. And so just for the scarcity alone, I would say them as one. Dude, honestly, every other DJ. I've been to so many festivals, so many shows, and everyone comes to LA at least occasionally, that I just feel like I've seen like almost everyone that I want to see. And the thing is, like, if I hadn't, like, I would just travel to go see them, you know?
Right.
I'll give you one more just quickly if people are just trying to get a feel for my taste in music. That's like, you know, sometimes a bit more poppy, sometimes a bit more underground. More pop like, not PAPI. Is Flume. Like, I saw Flume several times, but like he hasn't toured like in a long time. He hasn't put out music in a long time. And he finally just like put out this new mixtape, which is super sick, and a couple other tracks. And I just absolutely love Flume and haven't seen him in years. And I'm super pumped to see him again soon. He's not at Coachella, but that's an artist I haven't seen in a while. Oh, I'll give you one more. Okay, I got it. I've never seen Rufus Du Sol, and I absolutely fucking love them. They also haven't been around LA much. They were there in November, but I was in New Zealand, and I've never seen them, so I'm really excited about that. All right, there's 3. That's enough.
I think 3 is enough.
Yeah.
I think 3 is definitely enough. One of the questions I got on Twitter, I think this was Twitter, was who does he think is the biggest crusher nowadays in live nosebleed?
Yeah. I would say I don't really know. You know, I think that it's probably like someone that lives in Vegas or Macau, you know, but I mean, I could give you like a couple names, like just like through the grapevine and whatnot, you know, like I know that there's a few like internet crushers that have like kind of been grinding the Macau live games for years that I hear are just absolutely incredible players. You know, like True Teller, someone that I hear a lot about, but I'll give you like an old school guy that I used to play with forever. We were on Poker After Dark recently together, and that's Andrew Roble. Anytime I ever played with Roble, whether it was heads up 12 years ago online or the few times we've played together live, like I think he's like an absolutely brilliant player, and I definitely like deeply respect everything he's done, not only like in terms of execution in poker hands, but off the table as well, while also still like, to the best of my knowledge, keeping his name clean, which I think is like a pretty challenging and convoluted thing to do, like in nosebleed high stakes poker. There's just so much politics involved that like it's just so easy to make a lot of enemies and, you know, be accused of, you know, stealing players and this and that. And Roble's not a guy that I really hear too much negative about. And to have all of the money and be the best player and still be liked, that says quite a bit. Even though my relationship with personally is, you know, we've only talked a couple times. So.
Okay, I like that. Andrew Roble, maybe a True Teller, some other names out there in the mix. I could see that. I could see Andrew Roble being up there too. It seems like he's done very, 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 very well for himself in these games, and seems like he's in a pretty good position to have more games in the future. So
for sure, yeah,
definitely see that on here. Some thoughts on some of the players in the $1 million cash game. Someone like a guy like an Oscar. We saw Oscar mix it up there. It was our first time really getting exposure to Oscar. He played some hands very peculiar against Dennis, where especially one infamous hand where he won a very big pot, where he bet the river and call the big raise or something like that. So what kind of thoughts on a guy like an Oscar?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, like Oscar is like a great dude, like always a pleasant force to be around. Like him and I have played many 24-hour plus sessions together, winning or losing. He's always like a perfect gentleman, always great to be around. So, you know, I'll start with that. That I feel like in the end is always like the most relevant aspect about anyone. As a poker player, like I think like in many ways he's just absolutely brilliant. You know, like he probably doesn't have the experience in terms of just like total hours logged playing poker as many other people. But what he lacks in experience, he makes up for in just like raw intelligence. And it's so clear, like in so many things that he does and the way he owns like so many players, including like mediocre regulars, that like he's able to compensate for that lack of experience, or maybe even like to some extent formal study, like with just like fucking people up on a psychological level. And as someone who tries very hard to do the same, like I have like a lot of love and a lot of respect for that. And I don't know how much people have played with him or whatever, but he is action as fuck. He makes me look kind of nitty, so of course like I'm always going to adore him for that reason as well.
I like that about him. Oscar does seem like a kind of guy who has his own style, and certainly puts a lot of pressure on people, and likes to mix it up, do weird things, and do some different things. And we have I don't know what a raid is on Twitch, but shout out to Easter Dams. We're on YouTube or on Twitch right now. If you're watching on Twitch and you're from a different channel, welcome officially to the podcast. My name's Joe Ingram. We're with Garrett Adelstein, one of the high stakes poker player out there, one of the best. Do we consider yourself one of the best? I mean, I feel like that's a fair thing to say about you. One of the top high stakes live poker players in the world. Like how would we say it if we said something like that? Do you think?
I don't know, man. I really wouldn't know, and I don't really care to sort of like put a label on that sort of thing, you know.
All right. Well, I care. For the sake of the podcast, we're joined by one of the top high stakes poker players in the entire world. That's what I'm calling it, Garrett. You can agree, disagree, whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm going to call it that. Okay. For the sake of the audience's sake, we're going to go with this message. And
I'll just say thank you, and I appreciate it.
Bam, that's it right there. Okay. What about thoughts on someone like the Alpha Reg, Big Bet Berkey, Matt Berkey? I know you and him play a lot of hands together. You guys got a lot of fun moments in time.
You know, that's funny that you asked me. I don't think anyone's ever asked me what I think about Matt Berkey's skill level. So I think I've probably been asked that question, no joke, like at least 1,000 times. Of course, like, you know, every other time minus this one, like off stream or whatnot. But no, I mean, Berkey's another guy who's absolutely brilliant and also does a ton of things outside the box. So when it doesn't go well, like, he's going to be criticized by the people who live inside the box, you know? Do I think like Matt, like always plays great? Do I like always understand or think the thought process in some of the hands he plays is super sound? No. Like sometimes I don't love the way he plays some hands. Sometimes I scratch my head. But like, fucking the same thing can be said about me, you know? I can't tell you how many hands I play and then I review it later and I scratch my head and go, what the fuck was this, you know? So I think in that specific way, we can relate to one another. And again, you know, same as Oscar, like Matt's just like such a class act. Again, I think that it's so hard to be like a quality, classy person in high stakes poker. And he just like passes with flying colors. He's just like such a kind, like nice person, also like enjoyable to be around. Of course, like absolutely brilliant and interesting in terms of all of his like thought processes about things unrelated to poker. It's painfully clear both how intelligent he is and also like how well read he is, to a point that's like almost intimidating having conversations with him sometimes, you know, because he's just so intelligent. But yeah, but I'm like I said, I'm not gonna bullshit and say, you know, like Matt Berkey and Andrew Roble are probably similar, like in terms of their win rates. You know, Matt Berkey gives up a bunch of EV in a bunch of ways, probably very purposefully all the time, and because of that, like he gets into some of the sickest games like in the world, and I suspect he makes up for whatever EV he gives up occasionally and then some in a lot of these super profitable spots that he's able to get himself into. So
very kind words once again. I want to see if I can keep this going here with Cole. What about a man like an Art P? I can't say Art P. Art P obviously labeled a nit sometimes on the $1 Million Cash Game. Fighter players in the game known to fold a king queen suited under the gun, and you may or may not have never folded under the gun in your entire existence in the entire poker world. But What about a guy like Art P, who has made a name on there for himself and certainly is, I mean, to us at home, seems like a very feared player, methodical player on the tighter side, but at the same time, willing to take it to the streets and do what he's got to do if he needs to make a big bluff on later streets as well, too.
Yeah, yeah. Art, again, is someone I consider a friend. You know, we talk outside of poker. Again, an incredibly nice guy. Definitely one of the good guys in poker. Has a level of maturity to him that you just don't see with people as young as he is. You know, he's very young. I think he's 6, 7, 8 years younger than me. It's like a lot, whatever it is, you know. You know, we were talking about work ethic and things of that nature earlier, and he's obviously the model for it. You know, like, it's easy and funny to joke about how the first 2 poker tournaments he ever played, he won. I don't know if that's true. I do know he won 2 big poker tournaments, like, back to back, and he didn't really play them much before. It's something like that. But like everyone else that does that, just like gives the money back in high stakes games and then goes back and plays smaller or retires. That's the cycle, I believe, if I understand it correctly. And he couldn't be like more the opposite. It's like he immediately started playing bigger games and he almost immediately was a winner, and he just worked so insanely hard. Like, the difference between his game 2 years ago versus now, it's like, it's scary as fuck to think about. Like, he just wins and he wins and he wins. You know, like, I don't know if there's like another guy like in high stakes poker that's like taking more money out of the games. You know, he's just an incredibly good player. So
How do you deal with being friends with somebody in these games, but also playing these huge pots against them, and then the other psychological aspect that goes into it of, you know, being friends with someone but then battling with them on the table?
right, yeah. I mean, I think that there's a pretty solid mutual understanding, especially amongst the high stakes community. Like, people are friends, like whatever, but you know, obviously you're going to be trying your best, like, against each other in hands, and you know, like, it is what it is. Like, you kind of have to protect yourself emotionally from that too. Like, you know, like, basically, like, not feeling sorry, like, if you beat, you know, someone you consider a friend in a big pot. Like, I put work into that. Beyond that, the only thing you can really do is like try and create some distance. You know, like, Art and I aren't 2 people that are like getting together like every weekend. You know, like, I'll see him outside of poker like very occasionally, but to help make it not so challenging to protect myself emotionally and feel bad, like, if I beat him in big hands or whatever, like, you know, I think that's probably part of the reason why we don't hang out too much outside the tables. But yet, of course, again, get along great, etc. So
Yeah, makes sense. I look at people I'm friends with, I want to beat them even more. Like, you know, we might work on our game together or anything like that, or talk poker, or talk outside, but I think when we play, I'm looking to at least play some pots and see what happens out there too. So
I get it. I mean, but it's different, and I know you get this. Like, if someone's taking a 20 buy-in, 30 buy-in shot in a huge game, and then you stack them, like, that shit sucks. You know, that shit sucks. And
yeah, that does suck. Yeah, that part doesn't feel pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can
That
see.
doesn't apply to Art. He probably has all of the money in the history of the world, but in general, you know, there's certainly, like, you know, that happens. So.
Let's grab some questions from the chat here, guys, and we'll probably it's been a few hours here. We'll you know, we'll try to keep this at a I mean, it's already long as hell, but I appreciate y'all for tuning in, for tuning this late. If you are going to be putting out more content, putting out a Pot Manoa video tomorrow about my Live at the Bike session, or I'm sorry, Poker After Dark session this week. It's one of the people I played. I get
Come on, man, you're fucking it up. These people are competitors.
Yeah, you know what's funny is like that they are very competitive with each other. I don't know if this is public or not, but they both have equal disdain, it seems like, for the other end. They
That's how it goes, man. That's capitalism at work, you know. Like, I get it. You know, so.
Oh, it's so funny. It's like not talked about, but there is a bitter. There, like, amongst the people that are involved with each one, there's definitely a little rivalry going on. And
yeah, man, it's not really talked about to me either. Both sides of that fence, I think, try and like play like the Switzerland like diplomacy card with me too. You know. So
yeah, well, I got to tell you what, it's maybe not behind the scenes, because I certainly hear some things that I don't know if other people hear, and there's a competitive aspect. That's what makes it fun. I think they're both doing good things, and
yeah.
you know, you get one paywall, a little higher quality, you get one a little bit lower quality in terms of production value, but also high quality in terms of what they present. with the character development and the poker being played. So it's,
sure.
it's a little trade-off you get there too. So question, no, I'm not going to ask that one. Have you, no, I don't want to ask one other. Does Garrett, I don't want to talk about that one either. Let's see. Does he use the joke bet? It's an awful question. But I'll ask Garrett what he thought about Nick asking that guy if he wanted to put in the rest of his stack when he was trying to bluff you. I actually don't know what that's talking about there.
Yeah, there's some hand that I play against a recreational player, and like on the river, he bets like 80% of his stack or something, and I just go like, what is this bet? Why not just bet it all, And he says, if you want, we can bet there, like whatever. And then I think Nick just makes some like offhand comment like, oh, really? Or are you betting it all? Or do you want to do that? He says something like that. And he's not in the hand. And Nick knows very well that it's not the best thing to say, So no, he shouldn't have said that. Yes, Nick is very aware of that he shouldn't have said that. And he made a mistake, like just like I do, like all the time. I'm constantly like doing and saying things I shouldn't, including like at the poker table, including even like occasionally saying something I shouldn't allow, like in a hand, So it happens when you play infinite hours, and many times you're playing tired and whatever, like, it's going to happen. It really wasn't a big deal in real life. I'm sure everyone knows my decision was based exactly 0% off any feedback Nick had or anything that involved Nick in that hand. So he shouldn't, it had just no bearing on the hand. But yes, as a matter of fact, like if two people are in a big hand on the river, it's probably not so good to be talking to either of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of, speaking about Nick specifically, I kind of like seeing his development take place, and you can tell he's perceptive. He's like, he tries altering his sizes and spots now. Like, I don't know if it's always the right spots, but he's at least incorporating these ideas and concepts that he sees other players doing, like an Art P or even someone like you do. And you can tell he's getting better and better. The spots he picks, they could be a little bit different. It could be better in terms of understanding that, but I like his fight, man. He's got a lot of heart, but he does seem like he's not battling with you as much from the thing that I watched. It seems like maybe he's realized, okay, some players I have an edge on, I'm going to go after, I'm going to play hands with, but against some other players, I'm going to be really, really selective because these guys just are understanding things a little better than I am.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, I wouldn't say that that's really the case. Like we battle like all the time, but yeah, again, there's no question like Nick has improved, by leaps and bounds. And it kind of goes back to like what I was saying about like poker players who think like their shit don't stink. Like it's just ridiculous. Like you don't have to be a fucking rocket scientist to become good at poker. People who like put in the work get better at poker. It's like, it's really that simple. And, I don't know like where it became sort of like common, like there's like this common understanding that if one's primary income source is from poker, that like makes them by definition better or better than people whose primary income source isn't from poker. That's complete horseshit. And it's often like the exact opposite. In fact, like many poker players like don't really have the aptitude or skills or work ethic or whatever to do other things. So they like, hang by like a thread playing poker. Whereas like a lot of like, brilliant, like high achievers, like outside, who earn their money outside of poker, like they put in even some work and they become like very strong players because of like the same reasons that made them like wild successes in business, and again, there's a disclaimer there in that like the non-professionals I play with are usually insanely wealthy and absolutely brilliant. So I don't know if that applies to your rec at 2.5, but those are my experiences in high stakes.
Very interesting stuff. A lot of good stuff in here. There are a lot of bang bangs though, very subtle bang bangs sometimes. Maybe they're they're more obvious to others. They're not. I pick up on them all personally, but I normally I do the bang bang sound effect here, but.
Yeah, man, I'm not sure what gets more bang bang than whatever I said about God. That was like, and honestly, you did a great job, man. You just soft tossed it right to me. You're like, all right, man, connect the dots so we got a fucking quote here,
I wish I think that I could be really, really good at that, but I don't know how to do that. And I don't try to do that because I never really put up quotes anyway to begin with. And the quote from this podcast will certainly be not related to you talking about God. I don't think I'm going to go down.
Dude, God bless. Thank you very much for that.
That won't be on the infographic. That won't be the one we're putting up there. It'll probably be some other things. The guy on Live at the Bike I really like, one of my favorite players to watch, is Mr. Talkative named Andy. Yeah, the guy. First of all, never shuts the fuck up, and by that I mean, of course, he never actually talks. But I love watching that guy play. He's got so much heart, man. He's willing to go for it. He's willing to battle. He's willing to battle with anyone at the table, including yourself. And just seems like, man, it seems like a very tough player to play against at the table.
Yeah, for sure, man. Like someone asked me the other day on social media, and I just like felt like responding for whatever reason. They're like, it seems like Andy doesn't like you. Like whenever you bet, he raises, he doesn't fold, he always looks mad, And I was like, dude, nothing could be further from the case. Like I think Andy's like a great player and a great person. Like we have like a ton of fun at the table, especially off stream. Like on stream, like he usually is like very camera shy, quiet, and I think he's quieter like in groups. But like our 20 like shorthanded heads up, dude. Andy and I have played like heads up sessions, and we're just like a day into it. And like during big hands, we're like sitting there talking about the meaning of life. We're talking about our relationship struggles, like whatever, Like he's like a super good dude who I really like a lot, and I think it just goes to show like you can't judge a book by its cover. Like just because someone sits there quietly and doesn't look like they're having a good time or something. I mean, nothing could be further from the case when it comes to Andy, But he's another like live legend. He's been around a long time, just like shredding games up. So
yeah, he seems he seems like he probably does pretty well. I mean, any guys you got to imagine still playing these stakes at this point in time must be doing well in theory. They have a very successful backer. They know how to sell action very well or something of that nature. But if you're around the high stakes scene for 5+ years, most likely you're doing something correct and you're probably winning overall in the games that you're playing.
For sure. Yeah. Seems like a fair assumption.
That would be my sort of takeaway. Garrett, is there anything else on your mind that's something that's kind of at the tip that you might want to talk about, or something that you came into the podcast with on your mind or anything like that?
No. I mean, like it's interesting because this is, like I said, like almost a year to the day of my last podcast. And so there's like this sort of artificial like reunion, this artificial like year in review that kind of comes along with it, as I was sort of thinking about that the last, day or two before we did this podcast. And I mean, my whole poker career, like I just like don't really understand it really. That's the first like way I would phrase it. Like I'm just so incredibly fortunate and I don't really understand how I got here. And this last year, like just kind of like took that to another level in terms of just a lot of big action and a lot of run good in it. And I'm just very grateful. I'm just very grateful for what poker has given me. And although for a lot of people, like I think leaving poker would be best for those people who aren't like, it's not a primary income source, not trying to make it a primary income source would be best. But with those disclaimers in mind, like poker has done so much good for my life. And honestly, like it's just, I really don't have words for it. And I'm just so appreciative of what it's done. And so I hope that some of you can relate to that. And I hope some of you can feed off of that optimism, because I think it's so commonplace to just have everyone like in poker, like professional poker players, just in thread after thread on the internet, just talk about how fucked like their lives are, how fucked poker is, this and that. Mm-hmm. And I get it. And maybe, or probably, or whatever, that is the experience of many players, but like there are exceptions, and I'm just forever, indebted to it. So, and I feel like becoming, a bit more of a public figure and doing interviews like this is one very, very, very small way in which, you know, I can give back, you know. Yeah, it's like cool to help people with their mental game to make more money, but it's like a different thing entirely, going back to what you said, if and when like I receive calls from strangers and they go, I can't get out of bed, I can't stop crying, like, I know you don't know me, but do you have anything that you think can help me? Like, I mean, I'm just moved and touched every time I get calls like that. And I just want like anyone else out there like who's struggling with mental health to know, like, you know, the same applies to them. Like, you know, hit me up on Twitter, on Facebook, whatever. People can email me. That's fine. It's gadam86, GADAM86 at gmail.com. And, you know, there's nothing like I want to do more than help people who struggle with this kind of thing, because I know how incredibly painful it can be, you know. So that's about it, man. Sorry to end on a bit of a somber note, but
I don't think it's that somber. I think that's a very, you know, helpful thing, man. I think a lot of people are gonna maybe take you up on that offer, and at least to put the offer out there, see what happens. And I think those conversations that you have are just as good for you as they are for the other person too. So, you know, I'm sure that people are going to email you or send you messages on Twitter or Facebook, and especially we got people watching us right now, and a lot of people are gonna watch this back, man. So I appreciate you being, I mean, willing to come on here, you know, come on the show and share these thoughts and feelings. I know it's not easy to talk about these things publicly when
for sure.
you know so many people out there are going to be watching these things, man. That just takes, that's something honestly I can't bring myself to do. So to see you do something like that is inspiring to somebody even like me who says, hey, maybe I should put my shit out there like that. And the feedback I'll give from other people that are going through the same things, that might be really helpful for me. And that might be something that's a really important part of my life as well, too.
Dude, yeah, like one of the best ways I think to beat depression is like to help someone else. Get out of your own fucking head and help someone else, you know, and that's been like huge for me as well, you know. So we can end on that, like yeah. So thanks for having me, dude. I had a lot of fun, and let's run this shit back again next April. Only after I throw you under the bus on another stream first, though. All right?
You know, I was happy that Prahlad said some nice things about me. Very nice on the show too. So I got a lot of love for that guy, man. He's, you know, I tried to talk to him too and chat with him a bunch. He's been on the pod before, Legend of Poker.
For sure, yeah.
And but yeah, guys, let me know your thoughts. If you liked it, smash that like button on YouTube channel, man. We'll be back next week with some more podcasts. I'll let you know the schedule coming up here. I do know on April 21st, we're going to be having on Alex Foxon, who is number one of the top tournament players right now, up and coming guy, just been crushing it, man. I'm super excited to learn more about this guy. It's going to be on Monday, not next week, but the next week after that, Monday, Alex Foxon will be on. So I know that is the one I have for sure scheduled. So I'm looking forward to that one. So
yeah, man, that sounds great. And dude, fucking keep the potting up, man. The poker community needs you, man. I need you for my commutes. Don't let me down, man. Get out of bed and make some podcasts and be like, dude, Garrett needs some shit to listen to in the car.
Actually, you know? maybe you got to text me in the future when I don't pod for a bit and be like, hey, where the fuck are the podcasts, bro? Yeah. Let's get the hell out. Because that's normally what happens. I'm sitting around and I'm just, you know, in a zone, man, in a non-healthy zone, I guess you could say. So
I hear you, man.
Yeah, guys, that's it. That's what we got. Much love, everybody out there. Let me know what you think on Twitter. And if you want to follow Garrett, it's at GManPoker, on Twitter. If you want to watch Live at the Bike, where Garrett plays on, he plays most Friday nights, but you're not playing tomorrow, correct?
I'm not. No. Coachella. I leave tomorrow morning for Coachella. So no.
Coachella tomorrow for Garrett. Let's hope he makes it back and has a good time. I'll find out how Coachella went for Garrett. I'll let you guys know on some podcast next week at some point in time. But that's it. If you watched it all, I love you. You're awesome. It's been 3 hours of hopefully a lot of knowledge and wisdom that you've taken away that'll help you out with your own life. Yeah, your own poker life, your regular life, your girl life, your whatever life it is. So that's it. Next podcast will probably be on next Monday or Tuesday. Stay tuned to my social media for updates. That's it. Peace.